Chapter 286. Money was secondary. At most, he would be the number one nouveau riche. It was fine as long as he had enough money to spend. Shun Lian did not lack this. Even so, who did not want to be the richest? Number one nouveau riche in the north. Shun Lian. Others might find it unbelievable, but Shun Lian was not surprised at all. Everything was progressing according to his control. Wan Yin, I hope you can learn from this lesson and stop provoking me. Otherwise, I will not be merciful. Shun Lian thought to himself. He first gave Wan Yin 2 heads, then took away her title as the richest. It was a two-pronged revenge. For Wan Sanyi's sake, this result was Shun Lian being merciful. Now, it was up to Wan Yin to accept this kindness. In fact, even though Wan Yin had inherited the Gu Garden, her business methods were brilliant and did not lose to Wan Sanyi. In addition, she had the support of the Central Plains, causing the Gu Garden to reach a higher level. However, she still could not obtain the title of the richest in the north. The reason was simple. The advantages and disadvantages of inheriting one's father's business were too obvious. Even if Wan Yin did well, it was inevitable that others would think that she was basking in her father's glory. Standing on the shoulders of Wan Sanyi, there was no reason for her not to succeed. There was no reason for her not to do well, right? After all, what people liked the most was a story of a comeback. It gave people a feeling of encouragement, who would deliberately understand the pressure that the rich second generation endured. After all, it was even more difficult to maintain one's business and not start one's own business. Therefore, Wan Yin was prejudiced to a certain extent. Her brilliance was there, but it gave people the feeling that she was lacking. She had not reached the level of explosive. But at this time, Shun Lian rose up and surpassed Wan Yin. It was like a shadow that could not be dispersed looming over Wan Yin's head. This undoubtedly dealt a heavy blow to her reputation and gave many people an excuse to doubt Wan Yin's ability. Gu Garden. Wan Yin stood in front of the desk, her expression as calm as water. She held her brush and seemed to be in deep thought, but did not write for a long time. A drop of ink was dripped onto the paper. It was extremely eye-catching. She pushed open the door and entered. Seeing this scene, she looked deeply at Wan Yin and raised her eyebrows. Suddenly, Wan Yin came back to his senses and his expression returned to normal. He raised his head and asked, "Have you found anything?" She coughed softly. Her face was a little unsightly as she said bitterly, "Our 3 most important spies in New Kuan have been removed. We can't understand and grasp the situation inside New Kuan in time. We don't have enough infiltration, so we can't find out how they got the cure for the plague." Wan Yin gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, "The Shun Lian has visited Suilin of Goguryeo twice. If I'm not mistaken, Suilin of Goguryeo has betrayed us, causing family Huang's plan to fail." She sighed inexplicably and said, "At this juncture, even if we have solid evidence, we can't do anything to the Suilin of Goguryeo. There is no need for solid evidence. This fence-sitter Suilin of Goguryeo ruined my plans. I won't let him off." Wan Yin sneered. "No matter how arrogant Suilin of Goguryeo is, he is afraid of his master. I have already asked Central Plains to put pressure on Poison Dragonpool. Suilin of Goguryeo should receive his master's letters soon, requesting him to form an alliance with family Huang to resist the Shun Lian. Suilin of Goguryeo has no choice. He can't take advantage of both sides." Shuangshi's expression changed as she said with joy, "Great! Suilin of Goguryeo, family Huang, and Faiyuan Temple. The 3 of them will work together to suppress the Shun Lian. Our plan will succeed." Hearing this, Wan Yin's gaze flashed. He took a deep breath and wrote a line of words on the paper. "Wisdom Path Gu." Shuangshi glanced at it and said, "Rumor Gu has no effect on the Shun Lian. We can confirm that he has a Wisdom Path Gu." Wan Yin nodded and said coldly, "When Shun Lian fought with Ing Muyu, he condensed a mysterious light sword and injured Ing Muyu's 3-headed, 8-armed true body. This mysterious light sword is most likely formed from the power of wisdom." Saying so, Wan Yin wrote on the paper again, "Faith-type Gu." Shuangshi's expression changed. Shen Lian has a faith-type goo? Wang Yin's lips curled, and he said solemnly, Shen Lian obtained the cure to eradicate the plague, but he pretended to be mysterious and spread the word that he is the son of God, pretending to be a swindler. He is clearly building faith and using this plague to absorb the power of faith to strengthen himself. Shuangshi felt a chill in her heart and said, there are millions of people in Ronghua City, and they all worship Shen Lian as a god. They pray to him every day. The amount of faith that he has gained is immeasurable. The power of faith is known as incense in Taoism and the power of will in Buddhism. It is a powerful force that can be accumulated by many people. If Shen Lian accumulates enough power of faith, he will have the power to destroy heaven and earth. He will be invincible. Shuangshi was speechless. Wang Yin's expression dimmed, and he sighed. Suilin of Goguryeo, Family Huang, and Faiyuan Temple. Even if the three of them work together, they still might not be Shen Lian's match. The result might even be decided before the battle even starts. Shuangshi gasped and said, even Faiyuan Temple can't do it? Wang Yin lightly shook his head and said, Faiyuan Temple will not send out all their forces. Famous sects naturally have their own demeanor. They will send out their strongest monk to challenge Shen Lian to a duel. If they lose, they will have nothing to say. As for this monk, he is the greatest help the Huang family can get. Shuangshi's eyes flashed. Which monk will Faiyuan Temple send? When Yin's lips curled up, greed, anger, and stupidity abstain from wisdom. Faiyuan Temple has 6 masters who don't appear in the world. In addition, there are 2 strange monks, the laughing monk and the angry monk. Shen Lian is so tyrannical. If there is no accident, Faiyuan Temple will send out the angry monk. The angry monk. Shuangshi thought carefully, and her expression suddenly changed. She said in shock, that legendary peerless evil monk? I heard that when he was angry, the 4 poles were destroyed, the 9 continents were split, the fire was never extinguished, and the water was endless. He is simply a monster that brings about the end of the world. Wang Yin nodded and said, it is because the angry monk's destructive power is too great that he was suppressed by Faiyuan Temple under the demon subduing tower. Unless it is absolutely necessary, Faiyuan Temple will not release this monster. But Shen Lian, he has already forced Faiyuan Temple to release the world-destroying monster. Shuangshi sighed and said, this is called fortune and misfortune come together. Faiyuan Temple was probably unwilling to release the angry monk before, but Shen Lian is like the sun in the sky, forcing Faiyuan Temple to make a decision. Wang Yin took a deep breath and said, even so, I am still worried because Shen Lian is also a monster. Boundless power of faith gathered from all directions, whistling as it howled. Shen Lian's whole body floated in the air, shining with divine light, supreme and unparalleled. Carefree Goo, gold ranked rank 8. Carefree Goo, gold ranked rank 9. Carefree Goo, gold ranked rank 10. Divine ability, Carefree Will. Faith Stone. Shen Lian slowly opened his eyes, and a supreme divine light shot out from the bottom of his eyes. His gaze was focused on the interface. Carefree Goo has finally evolved to gold ranked rank 10, and it has gained 2 more divine abilities. Carefree Will divine ability should be the strengthened version of the body reconstruction effect. It can allow me to control my body more perfectly and create the legendary myriad demon body. As for the Faith Stone, Shen Lian's mind moved, and he slowly closed his eyes, continuing to absorb the endless power of faith. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The power of faith gathered at an unimaginable speed, becoming extremely dense. It turned from formless to tangible, and gradually turned into a divine light that could be seen with the naked eye, revolving around Shen Lian's body. As this continued, the power of faith became denser and denser. At a certain point, the quantitative change finally produced a qualitative change. All the power of faith gathered at one point, and with a cracking sound, it turned into a solid object. Shen Lian lightly grasped a pure white crystal. It was round and smooth, like a goose-warm stone. pure and transparent. So this is the faith stone. Shun Lian's mind shook, and he couldn't help but hold his breath. The faith stone was a highly concentrated form of the power of faith, containing terrifying energy. Once it exploded, its power would be unimaginable. This is simply a nuclear weapon. Shun Lian's mouth twitched. He had never thought that he would inadvertently create a destructive weapon. If I throw the faith stone into 9 Yin mountain range, Family Huang and 9 Yingu stronghold will be annihilated in an instant, and not even a trace of ashes will be left. Shun Lian's mouth couldn't help but curl up. With the faith stone, the path of hegemony suddenly became easy and comfortable. How could he not be happy? At this time, Ronghua City's plague was over. Without the suppression of the plague, as expected, the power of faith fell sharply, and Shun Lian's wish to continue condensing the second faith stone was dashed. Fine, leeks need to be harvested season by season. Ronghua City suffered from the plague, and its vitality was greatly damaged. It also needs time to recover. The power of faith came from the people's hearts, and he couldn't drain the pond to fish and burn the forest to hunt. Shun Lian calmed down and planned to recuperate for a period of time. At this point, Shun Lian's plan was completed. Using this plague, good things happened one after another, and his gains could be said to be huge. Calamity Gu evolved to gold-ranked rank 10 with abundant savings. Great Wind Rising 11 Gu evolved to gold-ranked rank 10 with abundant savings. Freedom Gu evolved to gold-ranked rank 10 with 1 faith stone obtained. Bewitchment points increased by 30,000 units. And endless wealth. This was not the end. Snake Jade Gu and Teleportation Gu, under the nourishment of the bewitchment points, evolved to gold-ranked rank 10, while the Blossoming Iron Tree divine ability and Thousand Shadows divine ability became stronger. Blossoming Iron Tree divine ability, water flowing backwards. This is a large area attack divine ability. There is also Teleportation Gu. The distance of teleportation has increased to 30 li. Awesome. Shun Lian was unable to restrain his joy. Not only was he beaming with joy, Nu Kuan's other members also had good news and were overjoyed. During this period of time, the number of wedding dress believers continued to increase and exceeded 1,000 people. Among them, the talented Gu masters, with the help of the wedding dress Gu, broke through their own shackles and advanced continuously. Yiting Yu was the first to step into gold-ranked rank, closely followed by Bu Lingkong, Liang Qizhu, Li Youxiang, and others. When Li Youxiang was at silver rank, she had developed a divine ability called Drunken Stupor. As long as she had a mouthful of wine in her mouth and spit it out, the wine smell would spread, and everyone in a certain range would fall into a drunken stupor. They would stagger like drunkards and fall into a deep sleep, unable to wake up even after being stabbed 3 times. This was a large area attack divine ability, and the effect was even better when used in a sealed environment. There was also the medical Gu Master Ning Roshin, who was usually low-key, but suddenly became a legend and advanced to gold-ranked rank. Shun Lian directly promoted her to deacon, and was in charge of Nu Kuan's medical department. Bai Ling didn't want to be outdone either. She silently evolved to the silver rank. Chapter 287. The current Bai Ling could create thousands of sleepy bugs with just a thought, buzzing like a swarm of bees leaving their hive. The scary thing was, these sleepy bugs had the ability to turn invisible to the naked eye, and even divine sense could not detect them. Even an expert like Shun Lian could fall in her trap if he was not careful. Shun Lian could not help but sigh at this. The wonders of the Gu Dao are truly indescribable. Water Qilin Palace. A person came to visit. This person was from family Huang, named Huang Yuanpei. Suilin of Goguryeo personally went out to welcome him. He knew the other party's intentions. A while ago, family Huang's clan leader, Huang Yuanwu, had sent a letter asking him why Nu Kuan had the cure to eradicate the plague, and had even made preparations in advance. Was he the one who leaked the information? Suilin of Goguryeo naturally replied, playing dumb. Huang Yuanpei came and went straight to the point, directly questioning Suilin of Goguryeo if he had told Shen Lian about the plague cure, causing family Huang to fail miserably. Suilin of Goguryeo said decisively, "It was definitely not me. Am I that kind of person? You should know the cure to eradicate chickenpox is not my exclusive secret. Many people know about it." Pausing for a moment, he continued, "I heard that Shun Lian has a medical goo master called Ning Roshin. Her medical skills are out of this world. She was the one who created the cure to eradicate the plague. Why are you suspecting me instead of investigating her?" Huang Yuanpei laughed coldly. "Suilin of Goguryeo, Shun Lian killed your son, but you warmly entertained him twice, releasing the tiger back to the mountain. Do you know that Shun Lian used that plague to become even stronger, gaining both wealth and battle strength? How are you going to fight him in the future?" Suilin of Goguryo's eyes twitched. He said coldly, "I am not afraid of Shun Lian. I entertained Shun Lian twice, but I was just pretending to be polite with him, using the chance to investigate Shun Lian's secrets." Huang Yuanpei sneered. "Then I would like to ask Suilin of Goguryeo if you have any information, and if you are willing to share it with family Huang." Suilin of Goguryeo pondered for a moment, before replying, "Shun Lian is proficient in physiognomy. His ability to observe faces is top-notch, seeking luck and avoiding danger. He claimed that he relied on his mystical physiognomy to turn danger into safety, defeating Ing Muyu." Physiognomy? Huang Yuanpei was bewildered. He wanted to ask more, but he could not get anything out of him, so he left with a stomach full of questions. Suilin of Goguryeo sat down with a muffled voice, sighing, "This Shun Lian is truly terrifying. I only told him the cure to get rid of chickenpox, but I never expected that he would use this matter to stir up trouble and reap huge benefits." Hearing this, Old Turtle knew what Suilin of Goguryeo was thinking. He said, "We cannot let Shun Lian take all the benefits for himself. My king, you also contributed." Suilin of Goguryeo nodded. At this time, a shrimp soldier came to report that Poison Dragon Pool had sent a message. "Master has sent a message." Suilin of Goguryo's expression became serious. He quickly took the message and read it. His expression became incomparably interesting. Old Turtle asked, "My king, what's wrong?" Suilin of Goguryeo smiled bitterly. "Master asked me to assist family Huang to deal with Shun Lian. I cannot slack off." This. Old Turtle was stunned. He could not understand why Poison Dragon Pool would interfere with the internal strife in the north. Suilin of Goguryeo also could not understand. He thought for a while, then suddenly exclaimed, "To be able to make Master intervene in the internal strife in the north, could it be that family Huang has obtained the support of the 9 great families in the Central Plains?" Old Turtle thought deeply and said, "If this is the case, then my king cannot continue to benefit from both sides." After the plague storm came to an end, on this day, Shun Lian gathered everyone for a meeting and said, "Family Huang is eyeing us covetously. He actually dares to bring disaster to Ronghua City. It is impolite not to reciprocate. We must also retaliate. We must fight our way to Nining Mountain." Bu Lingkong immediately cupped his hands and said, "Nining Mountain is family Huang's territory. Even a strong dragon cannot suppress a local snake. If we rashly invade, we will definitely suffer losses. Does clan leader have a brilliant plan?" Shun Lian smiled mysteriously and said, "I already have a brilliant plan. I will take the initiative to attack," swaggering up Nining Mountain. Konyu immediately said, "My Thunderclap Goo has already evolved to Silver Rank 10. The Thunder-type Goo's battle strength is very strong. It is not weaker than an attack-type Golden Rank 1 Goo. I am willing to follow clan leader and kill our way to Nining Mountain." Bu Lingkong, Liang Qizhu, and the others were not to be outdone. They all requested to join the battle. Each of them was filled with fighting spirit. They were completely fearless. This was their confidence. Shun Lian and the wedding dress Goo had brought them a qualitative change. Shun Lian, however, lightly waved his hand and said, "When the battle erupts, you all will naturally participate, but there is no need to rush. Stay in New Kuin and cultivate. I will go to Nining Mountain alone." Everyone's breathing suddenly stopped. They were incomparably stunned. Bu Lingkong's eyes flashed. He said in a deep voice, "Clan leader wants to be a live target, attracting all the firepower and creating an opportunity for us?" Shun Lian smiled, his domineering aura leaking out as he said, "With my current battle strength, who would dare to oppose me on this road? I am the king of the north. Patrolling the north is a matter of course. On the road of the king, those who block me will die." Next, Shun Lian gave some instructions and finalized the entire plan. After the plague incident, New Kuan's group had matured a lot. They could easily carry out the plan. The first step was to announce it to the world. After the plague broke out in Ronghua City, we received help from many parties. Among them, we would especially like to thank Suilin of Goguryeo. This was a thank you notice. It was just a short line, but it revealed shocking information. What was the reason for thanking Suilin of Goguryeo? It was not written in the notice. This made people's imaginations run wild. The notice was quickly passed to Water Chilin Palace. Suilin of Goguryeo heard it and broke out in cold sweat. He immediately cursed Shun Lian's 18 generations of ancestors. It had always been him, Suilin of Goguryeo, who betrayed others, but this time he was actually betrayed by Shun Lian. He was extremely depressed. "Once this matter is spread out, I will completely offend family Huang." Suilin of Goguryeo gritted his teeth and said he felt like he could not wash away his guilt even if he jumped into the Yellow River. Old Turtle Butler said in a deep voice, "My king, this Shun Lian is slandering you. We should immediately send a letter to family Huang and clearly express our attitude." Suilin of Goguryeo said with a toothache, "I really want to ally with family Huang, but will family Huang still believe me?" Old Turtle Butler said, "They will believe you as long as you pass the secret letter from Master to family Huang." Suilin of Goguryeo's eyes flashed. He nodded and said, "That's the only way." Just as he finished speaking, a vast voice suddenly came. "Suilin of Goguryeo, the king of the north is here to visit." Suilin of Goguryeo was shocked and said, "It's Shun Lian. Why is he here?" Old Turtle Butler was also shocked. After a moment of silence, he said, "My king, how about I go out and say that you are not here?" Suilin of Goguryeo thought for a moment and said in a deep voice, "No, I want to meet him and see what he wants." After a moment, Shun Lian swaggered into the Water Unicorn Palace. Suilin of Goguryeo welcomed him with a smile. However, when Suilin of Goguryeo saw the two figures behind Shun Lian, his face suddenly changed. One was a skinless blood corpse. It was incomparably horrifying. The other was the Song of the Oriole. He had slept with her before and was still thinking about it. "Haha, King of the North, my old friend, you came with beauties. What a romantic mood." Suilin of Goguryeo laughed dryly. His heart was thumping, and the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. Shun Lian laughed and said, "Not long ago, there was a plague in Ronghua City. Thank you, Suilin of Goguryeo, for reminding me that I had the chance to catch the culprit, so I came here to express my gratitude." Suilin of Goguryeo pretended not to know the two women and asked deliberately, "They are?" Shun Lian introduced them. "They're the family Huang sisters, Huang Ingluo and Song of the Oriole." Suilin of Goguryeo was stunned and said, You mean?" He pointed at the skinless blood corpse, and his hand trembled. Shun Lian nodded seriously and said seriously, "Suilin of Goguryeo, the family Huang sisters look charming and seductive, but their true appearance is actually a skinless blood corpse, which is extremely ugly. Look, this is what they look like." Suilin of Goguryeo's stomach was violently wriggling, and he wanted to vomit. Next to him, Housekeeper Old Turtle's face was twitching, and he also wanted to vomit. Seeing this, Shun Lian was especially concerned and said, "Suilin of Goguryeo, are you okay? What do you feel uncomfortable?" Suilin of Goguryeo waved his hand and resisted the urge to vomit, saying, "I ate something bad, but it's okay. Please come in." After they sat down, the family Huang sisters stood behind Shun Lian, while the Suilin of Goguryeo sat opposite him. He could see them as soon as he looked up, and it was as uncomfortable as it could be. Suilin of Goguryeo couldn't help but ask, King of the North, can you ask them to leave? Shun Lian smiled and said, There's no hurry. I brought the family Huang sisters here to hand them over to the Suilin of Goguryeo. Hand them over to me to deal with? Suilin of Goguryeo muttered in his heart. What does he mean? Shun Lian said, When I caught them, they confessed that it was the Suilin of Goguryeo who gave them varicella fish eggs and cooperated with them to create the plague and rumors. Hearing this, the Suilin of Goguryeo's mouth twitched, and he sneered, Do you believe that? Bang! Shun Lian slammed the table, startling the Suilin of Goguryeo and Old Turtle. He said, Suilin of Goguryeo and I felt like old friends at first sight, so I naturally didn't believe their nonsense and directly refined them into ghosts. However, they dared to slander the Suilin of Goguryeo, which is unforgivable, so I specially brought them over to the Suilin of Goguryeo. Suilin of Goguryeo quickly waved his hand and said, You can deal with them. Shun Lian narrowed his eyes and joked, Suilin of Goguryeo really has tender feelings for the fairer sex. Hearing this, the Suilin of Goguryeo couldn't help but recall the endless entanglements with the family Huang sisters. However, those memories all turned into nightmares, horrible nightmares, and his face couldn't help but turn ugly. Shun Lian, you are so vicious. Suilin of Goguryeo's heart was full of murderous intent. If he still couldn't see that Shun Lian was deliberately disgusting him, then he would be the biggest fool in the world. He wanted to make a move several times. Even the heaven's net entanglement slipped out of his sleeve. Suilin of Goguryeo calculated in his heart. He was at a loss, but in the end, he didn't dare to make a move. Shun Lian was trapped with the heaven's net entanglement, and then killed him with the Tiani holy water. At this time, Shun Lian suddenly changed the topic and said in a clear voice, Family Huang invaded Ronghua City and committed a heinous crime. If I don't take revenge, I am not a gentleman. I plan to take the initiative to attack the Nining Mountain. I wonder if Suilin of Goguryeo is willing to lend me a hand? Suilin of Goguryeo's face changed, and he said, This king is a water demon. It's not good for me to intervene in the fight between humans, right? Chapter 288. 10,000 human lives and the king's jade. Suilin of Goguryeo could not help but be envious of such generous conditions. However, he did not lose his cool. No matter how many benefits there were, it was useless. Since Poison Dragon Pool had given the order, he had no other choice. After all, Suilin of Goguryeo was able to gain a stable foothold in Black River Estuary because of Poison Dragon Pool support. He did not dare to disobey his master's order. Immediately, Suilin of Goguryeo had an extremely regretful expression as he shook his head. It is best for you to settle the matters of fighting and killing among humans. Forgive this king for being unable to help. Shun Lian's gaze flashed as he chuckled. If Suilin of Goguryeo is not satisfied with the price, we can still discuss it. How about this? 15,000 human lives will be shared with the king's jade. Furthermore, I will order people to build a proper shrine for you, so that you can enjoy the worship of the people in the human world. It was worth mentioning here. The so-called proper shrine was the official and orthodox sacrificial ceremony. The people would come before the divine tablet on an auspicious day and present food and other gift to the god in front of the statue to express their reverence and pray for blessings. And the demons who enjoyed the worship of the people would often give birth to faith-type goo and turn into the gods in the hearts of the people. They would not need to do anything and would be able to obtain the sacrificial offerings of pigs and sheep, as well as the power of faith. If they worked hard and showed some signs of divinity, their prestige would be raised to a certain extent. If they had many believers, the benefits would naturally be endless. For example, Suilin of Goguryeo had a chance to become the Wei River's water god. As long as there were people on the continent supporting him and helping him build temples everywhere, wantonly raising his fame and creating a mythical image, he would be able to capture the people's faith and become the Wei River's water god. After becoming the Wei River's water god, Suilin of Goguryeo would be able to use the power of faith of the people to refine the entire Wei River and fuse with it. As long as the Wei River did not dry up, he would be immortal. He could be said to be as glorious as the sun and moon, as long as the mountains and rivers. Naturally, there are many benefits. For example, the Swalan of Goguryeo could ask his followers to sacrifice virgin boys and girls to him every month. Because he was an official god, eating virgin boys and girls would not create any karma. He could simply sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. It was a wonderful and boundless joy. Upon hearing this, Swalan of Goguryeo couldn't help but gulp. He had to admit that Shun Lian's proposal was too tempting. If it were any other time, Swalan of Goguryeo might have immediately agreed. He could not wait to kneel down and lick Shun Lian's boots. Revenge for his son's death was nothing to him. However, Swalan of Goguryeo looked up to the sky and sighed. He felt that he was really unlucky. At this time, his master intervened and gave him a strict order, forcing him to have no choice. The corners of his mouth twitched as he said, "I appreciate the king of the North's good intentions. I do not want to get involved in the conflicts between the human race. Please forgive me." Shun Lian raised his eyebrows and said in surprise, "Does Swalan of Goguryeo have some hidden troubles?" "Even if I did, I could not tell you." Swalan of Goguryeo laughed and waved his hand. "There is no hidden troubles. The king of the North is thinking too much." Shun Lian said, "Well, I will not make things difficult for Swalan of Goguryeo." He seemed to have given up and changed the topic. "Let's talk about another business." Swalan of Goguryeo tilted his head. "What business?" Shun Lian's expression became serious. He said seriously, "The war is imminent. I want to buy a batch of Tiani holy water from Swalan of Goguryeo." Swalan of Goguryeo looked embarrassed. He said, "Tiani holy water is my important savings. I never sell it." Shun Lian leaned forward. "You won't sell it for any price?" Swalan of Goguryeo gritted his teeth and said flatly, "It's not for sale. Please forgive me." Shun Lian looked regretful. He put his hand on the disaster scepter and said with a smile, "In that case, Shun will not disturb you any longer. Goodbye." Swalan of Goguryeo sighed in relief. He hurriedly got up and sent Shun Lian off as if he was sending off the god of plague. Shun Lian swaggered away with family Huang and her sisters. Swalan of Goguryeo watched them leave. He finally could not help but vomit. After that, even if he saw beautiful mermaids, he would not be interested in them. He was sick of them. Old Turtle came back and reported, "The secret letter has been sent out. Family Huang should receive it soon." Swalan of Goguryeo nodded. Sure enough, Huang Yuanpei came early the next morning. He had a warm smile on his face, as if he was not the one who came to denounce Shun Lian last time. Huang Yuanpei said with a smile, "Swalan of Goguryeo is willing to help family Huang. I'm very grateful. Do you have a plan to deal with Shun Lian?" Swalan of Goguryeo had already thought about it. He said with a smile, "Shun Lian plans to take the initiative to attack Nining Mountain. I will take this opportunity to lead the Wei River's water demons to attack New Kuan. We will destroy it and cut off his escape route." This was the plan he and Old Turtle came up with. Huang Yuanpei secretly sneered. Who did not know that Shun Lian had become the richest man in the north? New Kuan's headquarters had endless wealth. Swalan of Goguryeo is counting his chickens before they hatch. Huang Yuanpei laughed in his heart. He frowned and said, "Shun Lian has always been meticulous. Before he attacks Nining Mountain, he will naturally consider New Kuan's safety. Does Swalan of Goguryeo really think that this is a good opportunity?" Swalan of Goguryeo pondered for a while and said confidently, "Shun Lian and I are just pretending to be nice. He won't suspect me." Huang Yuanpei curled his lips and sneered. "Shun Lian has Bayou Palace behind him. The left and right protectors are invincible. Before I came, I heard that Shun Lian invited them to take charge of New Kuan. Does Swalan of Goguryeo think that he still has a chance?" Swalan of Goguryeo's heart skipped a beat. His expression changed as he said, "Is the news true?" Huang Yuanpei rolled his eyes and said, "This news should have spread by now. You will know if you ask around." Just as he finished speaking, a shrimp soldier suddenly ran over and whispered in Old Turtle's ear, Old Turtle then walked to Swalen of Gogirio's side and said with a complicated expression, "New Kuin is indeed spreading this news. With the left and right protectors of Bayou Palace holding the fort, New Kuin is impregnable. It will be difficult to attack." Swalen of Gogirio's expression sank. He was annoyed and said in a low voice, "Shun Lian is really calculating." Huang Yuanpei squinted his eyes and said, "I heard that Shun Lian came to visit Water Qilin Palace yesterday. What's the matter?" Swalen of Goguryeo was slightly depressed and explained the general situation. After Huang Yuanpei heard it, his spirit was shaken and he blurted out, "Is this true? Shun Lian invited you to attack 9 Mountain together?" Swalen of Goguryeo raised his eyebrows and said, "Why are you so agitated? This king has already sternly refused and firmly chose to stand on family Huang's side." Huang Yuanpei waved his hand and said, "I am not blaming your majesty. I just feel that this is a good opportunity." "Oh." Swalen of Goguryeo straightened his body and pricked up his ears to listen to Huang Yuanpei's opinion. Huang Yuanpei said, "Your majesty can agree to Shun Lian's request and sneak into his team. When we reach 9 Mountain, you can suddenly change sides at the crucial moment. Wouldn't that be a great merit?" Swalen of Goguryeo's eyes twitched, and he sneered, letting this king take such a risk and family Huang reap the benefits. "Do you think this king is a fool?" Huang Yuanpei stood up and solemnly cupped his hands and bowed. He said, "Family Huang will naturally not treat your majesty unfairly. To be honest, after receiving your majesty's secret letter, family head immediately prepared 300 young boys and girls to send over. They are currently on the way and will be delivered at a later date. In addition, there are 10 beauties of the highest quality. All of them are outstanding beauties, charming and enchanting. I guarantee that Swalen of Goguryeo will like them." Swalen of Goguryeo's stomach churned. He hurriedly said, "Forget about the beauties. This king does not have the fortune to enjoy them." Huang Yuanpei was stunned. He could not help but glance at Swalen of Goguryeo's crotch. He felt extremely strange and thought to himself, "This is strange. Swalen of Goguryeo, this old lecher, actually did not accept beauties. Did the sun rise from the west? Could it be that he thinks that there are not enough beauties?" When Huang Yuanpei thought of this, he immediately smiled and said, "If your majesty is not satisfied, family Huang will immediately select another 30 beauties and send them over." Swalen of Goguryeo's expression twitched slightly. He waved his hand fiercely and said, "No need, no need. This king has been cultivating in seclusion recently and does not approach women." Huang Yuanpei had an expression of, "I would be a fool to believe you." He could not help but feel suspicious. Could it be that there was a problem with Swalen of Goguryeo's body? Could it be that that part of his body had withered? Swalen of Goguryeo coughed lightly and said, "How about this? Allow this king to seriously consider it for 3 days before giving you an answer." Huang Yuanpei cupped his hands and said, "The Shun Lian is about to set off. This opportunity will not come again. Your Majesty, please make a decision as soon as possible." 2 days later, family Huang did as promised and sent 300 young boys and girls to the Water Qilin Palace. Swalen of Goguryeo ate heartily. At this time, Huang Yuanpei came to urge him again. Swalen of Goguryeo and housekeeper Old Turtle discussed back and forth and repeatedly refused. He wanted to participate in the war, but he did not want to be involved in such a dangerous way. Naturally, he was unwilling to agree. Who would have thought that a secret letter from the Poison Dragon Pool would suddenly arrive and completely cut off Swalen of Goguryeo's escape route? His master had ordered him to listen to family Huang's arrangements and not be negligent. Otherwise, he would have to eat the fruit of suffering. Swalen of Goguryeo could only be called miserable. He had no choice but to send a letter to the Shun Lian to express his intention to surrender. The Shun Lian was overjoyed and replied to the letter. They agreed to meet 3 days later at the Celestial Water Pavilion and set off for the 9 Mountain together. On this day, the sun rose from the east. Multicolored light shone brightly as the morning sun sprayed out colors and melted gold within 1,000 miles. In front of the Celestial Water Pavilion, Sualen of Goguryeo led 500 shrimp soldiers and crab generals to the shore of the Wei River, but there was no sign of Shun Lian. After waiting for half an hour, he saw Shun Lian swaggering over while yawning. Seeing this scene, Sualen of Goguryeo was extremely speechless. Suddenly, he saw that there were only 4 retainers beside Shun Lian. He could not help but be stunned. Sualen of Goguryeo, good morning. Shun Lian quickly stepped forward with a face full of smiles. It's not that I'm early, it's that you're too late. The sun is almost shining on your butt. Sualen of Goguryeo cursed inwardly, but he still wore a smile on his face. After greeting him, he could not help but ask, King of the North, why did you only bring 4 retainers for this crusade against family Huang? Where's the army? Shun Lian blinked and asked doubtfully, what army? Sualen of Goguryeo said seriously, the army to attack family Huang. Shouldn't New Kuan be out in full force? Shun Lian replied with an "oh." Then he said arrogantly, it's just family Huang. There's no need to mobilize so many people. Shun and Sualen of Goguryeo are enough. Sualen of Goguryeo was stunned. He had an expression of did I hear wrongly? And said in a low voice, you mean, you plan to attack family Huang with only 4 retainers? Chapter 289. The Sualen of Goguryeo almost cursed out loud. Are you treating this king as the main force? How can such an important matter be taken lightly? The Sualen of Goguryeo's expression darkened. King of the North, do you have other plans? Haha, I'm just joking. The Shun Lian's expression turned serious after laughing. He nodded and said, of course. This king has an elite force and is secretly heading to Nine Mountain, preparing to deal a heavy blow to family Huang. Elite force. The Sualen of Goguryeo's eyes turned. He immediately made up his mind to find out the whereabouts of this elite force and report it to family Huang, waiting for an opportunity to eliminate it. The Shun Lian looked up at the sky and said with a smile, it's getting late. Let's go. A carriage drove over. The Shun Lian extended his hand and made an inviting gesture. Sualen of Goguryeo, how about riding in the same carriage as Shun? The Sualen of Goguryeo hesitated for a moment, then shook his head and said, no, this king has a carriage. He clapped his hands. With a splash, a huge black shadow broke out of the Wei River. It was a crab monster. The crab monster was about 5 to 6 meters long and wide. It was dragging a resplendent crystal throne on its back. The water-Chilan king's eyebrows revealed a proud expression. After chuckling, it sat down on the crystal throne. Meow, from the Mare People race immediately served tea. Seeing this scene, a petite and cute figure beside the Shun Lian sneered and muttered, old monster, you're showing off. This person was Li Youxiang. The Shun Lian had planned to go to Nine Mountain alone. However, due to everyone's persuasion, he could only agree to bring along 2 of his personal guards, Shihu and Ning Quan. Who would have thought that Li Youxiang would suddenly appear and pester the Shun Lian to go with her? To go to Nine Mountain, they had to pass by Tangking Mountain. Li Youxiang made a fuss about going home to visit her family. As for the last retainer, she was Li Youxiang's sworn friend in New Kuan. Her name was Feng Ruoshi. She was 22 years old and had a graceful, and beautiful appearance. This Feng Ruoshi was not simple. Although she was a woman, she was a descendant of the corpse path. She specialized in cultivating the corpse goo and possessed the demon weapon soul-absorbing bell. She was skilled in exorcism and was the nemesis of corpse path. Even better, Feng Ruoshi had been in Nine Ingu stronghold for 3 years and was familiar with the place. Li Youxiang strongly recommended Feng Ruoshi, and Shun Lian felt that this girl would be of great use. He gave her the goo for the wedding gown and the primordial water and brought her along. Thus, Shihu and Ning Quan became the coachman, Feng Ruoshi became the maid, and Li Youxiang, who was carrying a wine jar and smelling of alcohol, came out to have fun. Such a strange combination was Shun Lian's teammates in the expedition to Nine Mountain. Shun Lian entered the carriage. Li Youxiang and Feng Ruoshi sat beside him. Shihu and Ning Quan sat in front of the carriage and drove the carriage forward. Sualin of Goguryeo and the 500 shrimp soldiers and crab generals followed closely behind. In the carriage, Li Youxiong could not help but ask, Sualin of Goguryeo is a sly old fox. He will not take risks easily. Young master, what method did you use to force him to come out? Shun Lian's lips curled into a smile. It was just a small scheme to drive a tiger to chase a wolf. It is not worth mentioning. Actually, when Shun Lian visited Sualin of Goguryeo, he used the Calamity Scepter to send a tribulation to Sualin of Goguryeo. The tribulation was not to go far. As the saying goes, on the 4th day of the first lunar month, the kitchen god was checking the household register. It was not to go far. Tribulations were incomparably mysterious. If you were hit by the not to go far, even if you really did not want to go far, the more inadvisable it was, the more reasons would force you to leave home. Although Shun Lian did not know what exactly happened, the tribulation would descend and occur in the most natural way. Sualin of Goguryeo had no choice but to travel with him due to various external and internal reasons. For the next few days, the group traveled at a moderate pace on the main road. They traveled during the day and stayed in the town at night. Nothing happened. Along the way, Shun Lian would pay a visit to any aristocratic family or sect they encountered. It was very ostentatious to make friends. On the way, Sualin of Goguryeo did not stay idle. He contacted family Huang almost every day to report the situation, who Shun Lian met, and what they talked about. He did not leave out any details. Naturally, the news that Shun Lian sent out a surprise attack was also spread out. Family Huang did not dare to be careless. They spread out a net to search for the whereabouts of the surprise attack. However, they found nothing. On the other hand, Shun Lian intentionally or unintentionally revealed important information. One day, he said that there was a surprise attack. The next day, he said that he had already planted a spy in family Huang. Sualin of Goguryeo was very spirited. He kept sending messages to family Huang. However, they could not find anything. After a while, family Huang could not help but become suspicious. There were disagreements. Some people began to question whether Sualin of Goguryeo was reliable. Some people thought that Sualin of Goguryeo was tricked by Shun Lian. As a result, family Huang gradually calmed down. Sualin of Goguryeo did not know about this and continued to inform on Shun Lian. Young master, the dark jungle is in front of us. The terrain is complicated and hidden. It is an excellent ambush point. With our speed, it will take us 2 or 3 days to pass through the jungle. There's only one place to rest on the way, Long Lake Town, Feng Ruoshi reminded. Shun Lian smiled and said playfully, we'll deal with whatever comes our way. We can just swagger through it. There's no need to speed up or take a detour. I just want to let family Huang know where I am and how many days it will take for us to reach Nining Mountain. Feng Ruoshi and the other 3 were speechless. He did not take family Huang seriously at all. In fact, they were not the only ones who thought so. Almost all the forces in the northern region thought so. They paid close attention, watched, and guessed. Shun Lian and family Huang would decide who was the boss in the northern region. The winner would be the king. Rumors spread like wildfire outside that Shun Lian had obtained the support of Sualin of Goguryeo and had a higher chance of winning. This caused many forces who originally wanted to support family Huang to back out. In order to protect the Water Qilin King, the Huang clan couldn't explain anything. There was no need to mention how depressed they were in their hearts. They felt as if they had lifted a rock and smashed it on their own feet. After the group entered the dark jungle, they arrived at Long Lake Town in the evening. The sky was slightly dark and Long Lake Town was slightly deserted. The sound of blacksmiths swinging their hammers could be heard from afar. Shun Lian led the group into the town. There is only one inn in Long Lake Town that we can stay in, the Bright Moon Inn. Feng Ruoshi had been to Long Lake Town before. She looked around and gradually frowned. Why is the town so quiet? I can't even hear dogs barking or roosters crowing. There's only the sound of blacksmithing. As soon as she said that, the sound of blacksmithing came to an abrupt end. The world fell silent with only the sound of the cold wind blowing. Li Youxiong could not help but shiver. She leaned closer to Feng Ruoshi and whispered, "Is alcohol prohibited in Long Lake Town? Fong Ruoshi shook her head and said, Alcohol prohibition? The northern region is a land of bitter cold. Northerners love to drink strong alcohol. How can be alcohol prohibition? Gulp. Li Youxiang swallowed her saliva and said, That's strange. There's no smell of alcohol in the town. Do you know what that means? No one in Long Lake Town has drunk alcohol for at least 2 days. Fong Ruoshi's expression changed. Shi Hu and Ning Quan looked as if they were facing a formidable enemy. They could not help but be alert as they coldly scanned their surroundings. At this moment, a loud laugh was heard. King of the North, what's the matter? It's getting late. Let's quickly find a place to stay for the night, said Sui Lin of Goguryeo with a laugh. Shun Lian nodded and said with a faint smile, There's only one in here. Let's stay there for the night. The group quickly found Bright Moon Inn, then had 2 floors and a courtyard behind it. It was a simple thatched hut that could accommodate people. The owners of the inn were a couple. The boss was tall and plump, wearing a large apron. With one look, one could tell that he was also a chef. The lady boss was still charming, and her abacus never left her body. She was a meticulous person. Shun Lian and company asked for a room and ordered food before entering their respective rooms to rest. Everything was fine. Late at night, Li Youxiang suddenly woke up. She heard the sound of blacksmithing. Who's blacksmithing in the middle of the night in the deep pit? Li Youxiang was annoyed. She covered her ears and covered herself with a blanket to sleep. However, the sound of blacksmithing reverberated throughout. She could not tolerate it any longer. Fong Ruoshi, who was in the same bed as her, was sleeping soundly. Li Youxiang did not wake her up. She got out of bed and lit a candle before leaving the room. She stayed on the 2nd floor. Shun Lian was next door, while Shi Hu and Ning Quan were next door. The moment she stepped out of the door, the darkness and cold air outside surged like a tidal wave. She could not help but shrink her neck in fear. However, in order to have a good night's sleep, Li Youxiang resolutely went downstairs. She saw that the boss and lady boss were not at the front desk. The inn's door was open and not closed. They don't close the door at night. Li Youxiang looked behind the counter and smiled. She walked over and picked up a jar of wine. She drank a mouthful before walking out of the inn and onto the long street outside. The entire street was dark and the cold wind was howling. Only a white lantern hanging from a blacksmith shop not far away was swaying in the wind, casting a dim yellow light. Li Youxiang drank a mouthful of wine to boost her courage and walked over quickly. The sound of blacksmithing became louder and more urgent. She even saw a slender figure hammering. She walked closer and closer. Hey, it's the middle of the night. You, Li Youxiang shouted as she approached. The next moment, she was stunned and shuddered. The blacksmith shop was closed and empty. Chapter 290. Li Youxiang looked around, but there was no shadow. She did not know when the sound of forging had disappeared. The wind was very strong, causing the white lantern to shake violently. The dim light that was cast on the ground was also swaying. Gulu. Li Youxiang swallowed her saliva. Instinctive fear choked Li Youxiang's breath. Without thinking, she started to run. Just as she turned around, a gust of cold wind blew, extinguishing the candle. Li Youxiang was even more afraid. Looking at the direction of the inn, it was only 500 meters away. Gritting her teeth, she started to run. Dang, dang, dang. Li Youxiang had only run 100 meters when suddenly the sound of forging rang out again. It gave her a big fright. She could not help but stop and look back. Under the pale white lantern, there was a slender figure. He was waving a hammer, striking again and again. Oh my God, I bumped into a ghost. Li Youxiang's scalp was numb. She was really scared. Cold sweat poured out. At this time, her gaze focused. She suddenly saw an old woman walking towards her. The old woman was bent over, her head lowered. She was leaning on a walking stick, staring at the ground, as if she was looking for something. The old woman walked past the blacksmith shop. Li Youxiang stared with wide eyes. In the end, nothing happened. The old woman walked past the blacksmith shop, step by step, towards her. When she was near, the old woman still had her head lowered. But she seemed to have seen Li Youxiang through some method. She suddenly said with a hoarse voice, "Little girl, I lost something. Did you see it?" Li Youxiang heard the old woman's low sobbing. It was a very sad sobbing sound. She could not help but hold the wine jar in front of her. She timidly asked, "Old woman, what did you lose?" The old woman's sobbing sound became much louder. "My eyeballs were lost. Did you pick them up?" In the next moment, the old woman suddenly raised her head. On her wrinkled face, there were two streaks of blood. Her eyes were empty. There were no eyeballs. Tears mixed with blood flowed out. "Oh my God!" Li Youxiang screamed. Her body was as cold as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. But fell to the ground. "My eyeballs! Give me back my eyeballs!" The old woman cried, approaching step by step. "Don't come over. I didn't take your eyeballs." Li Youxiang was scared to death. She rolled and crawled, her face pale white. Suddenly, the old lady's crying stopped. Li Youxiang was stunned. She turned her head and looked behind her. The old lady was nowhere to be seen. Li Youxiang wiped off her cold sweat and let out a long sigh of relief. She was still in shock. The strange thing was that Li Youxiang felt a pair of cold eyes staring at her from beginning to end. "Drink some wine to boost your courage, then run back to the inn in one breath." Li Youxiang shook her head and tried her best to pull herself together. She picked up the wine jar and was about to drink when suddenly she saw two spherical objects floating in the wine. They looked like eyeballs. Li Youxiang's hair stood on end like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. Her mind was on the verge of collapse. She threw away the wine jug and curled up into a ball, trembling. Finally, she couldn't bear it any longer and burst into tears. "Why are you crying?" After a while, a familiar voice sounded. Li Youxiang looked up and saw Feng Ruoxi standing in front of her, looking at her with a frown. "Ruoxi, there's a ghost. There's a ghost." Li Youxiang crawled up and hugged Feng Ruoxi's legs, her eyes filled with endless fear and unease. "Ghost?" Feng Ruoxi's expression changed. She helped Li Youxiang up and asked calmly, "Where did you see the ghost?" Li Youxiang told her what happened. The sound of blacksmithing, the old lady without eyeballs. Feng Ruoxi pondered for a moment and said, "I didn't hear any blacksmithing. I got up in the middle of the night to relieve myself and found that you weren't there. I was worried that something had happened to you, so I came out to look for you. Then I saw you crying here." Li Youxiang turned to look at the blacksmith shop. There were only white lanterns swaying back and forth in the wind. Seeing this, Feng Ruoxi took her hand and said, "Let's go and take a look." Li Youxiang didn't dare and shook her head. "I'm scared. Let's go back and let young master deal with it." Feng Ruoxi immediately raised her chin and said, "Have you forgotten what I do? My family has been necromancers for generations, specializing in eliminating ghosts and warding off evil spirits." As she spoke, she took out the soul-absorbing bell with a confident look. Li Youxiang's uneasy heart calmed down a little. After thinking, she said, "Then you must not let go of my hand. I've heard a lot of ghost stories from the corner of the Song dynasty. The most common plot is that two people are walking together and suddenly something happens. One of them abandons the other and runs away. Then one of them will inevitably die." Feng Ruoxi laughed. "You'll scare yourself to death. Don't worry, I won't let go of your hand even if you beat me to death." The two sisters walked forward hand in hand. Soon, they arrived at the blacksmith shop. Feng Ruoxi squinted her eyes and said curiously, "There doesn't seem to be any problem with the blacksmith shop, but why is there a paper lantern here?" Li Youxiang thought about it and said, "Oh right, this is the only place on the whole street with a paper lantern." Feng Ruoxi calmed down and picked up a wooden stick to pick up the paper lantern. She couldn't help holding her breath when she saw it. Li Youxiang became nervous and asked, "What's wrong?" Feng Ruoxi's lips tightened, and she said in a deep voice, "This is a human skin lantern." Human skin? Li Youxiang's hair stood on end, and her face paled. She felt cold and couldn't help but shiver. "Do you know what it means to hang a human skin lantern?" Feng Ruoxi's expression was obscure, and her face lost a lot of color. She asked and answered her own question. The human skin lantern itself is harmless, but it illuminates the road at night. People and ghosts are watching. If we provoke the ghosts, Long Lake Town may have become a ghost town. 100 ghosts walk in the night. Li Youxiang's teeth chattered, and she was so scared that she was about to cry again. She said, Throw it away. Throw it away. Let's go back quickly. Fong Ruoshi threw the human skin lantern on the ground and stepped on it. In an instant, darkness enveloped them like a tide. Fong Ruoshi took out a match and lit it. She then pulled Li Youxiang back. The two walked quickly and covered more than a kilometer in a moment. Fong Ruoshi stopped abruptly and said in a deep voice, "Something's wrong. The blacksmith shop is at most 500 meters away from the inn. Why haven't we reached it yet?" She raised the match and looked into the distance. She could vaguely see the inn in front, but it seemed very far away. Ruoshi, look. Suddenly, Li Youxiang's terrified voice was heard. Fong Ruoshi looked back, and her hands and feet turned completely cold. She saw a white lantern hanging in front of the blacksmith shop, not far away, swaying in the wind. There was also a crushed white lantern on the ground. Who hung it? Fong Ruoshi shivered as the cold wind blew over. All of a sudden, children's laughter could be heard. They seemed to be singing a ballad, but she couldn't tell where they were coming from. "Daddy is digging my eyes. Don't be afraid of the dark. Don't be afraid of the dark. Mommy is peeling my skin. Don't be afraid of the pain. Don't be afraid of the pain." Chapter 291. The nursery rhyme came from far and near. Li Youxiang's face turned paler and paler. Fong Ruoshi could no longer stay calm. She gripped the soul-absorbing bell tightly, her knuckles turning white from excessive force. Suddenly, a few dim yellow halos appeared on the water bridge across the street. It was an arched bridge made of wood. When they entered the town, they happened to pass by the water bridge. When they stepped on the bridge, it creaked as if it would collapse at any time. Gradually, Li Youxiang and Fong Ruoshi saw what the dim yellow halos were. They were all children of 6 or 7 years old. They were carrying white lanterns and jumping on a bridge. There was no other noise except for the singing. It was as if the wooden bridge had been renovated. The coldness engulfed the sisters like a tide. They could not help but widen their eyes in horror. The children crossed the water bridge and walked over with lanterns. All of them were pale, human skin lanterns. The children stopped at the bridge and chased each other. One child grabbed another child and dug his hand into the child's eye sockets. He held the child's eye and tossed it back and forth in his hand. The other child pulled out his tongue and threw it into the river to feed the fish. An older child came and stuck his hand into their stomachs with a grin. He pulled out 2 intestines and tied them together, making them more than 10 meters long. He began to dance and play skipping. Li Youxiang was so frightened that all her hair stood on end. Fong Ruoshi gasped. She immediately raised the soul-absorbing bell and shook it violently. The rapid ringing of the bell reverberated, turning into ripples that spread in all directions. Ah! The children seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. They hurriedly covered their ears and let out horrifying screams. Their eyeballs fell out, their skin peeled off, and their flesh fell to the ground in large chunks. Soon, they turned into puddles of pus. Only the human skin lanterns were left rolling on the ground. "They're all ghosts." Seeing this scene, Li Youxiang was greatly shocked. She wanted to drink a mouthful of aged wine to calm her nerves. Fong Ruoshi said in a deep voice, "Ghosts are formed from the resentment and hatred of humans. They're all negative energy. These innocent children must have died a horrible death. That's why their souls are still lingering around, attracted by the light of the human skin lanterns." Li Youxiang couldn't help but think of the lyrics of the nursery rhyme. Some horrible images appeared in her mind, making her shudder. After giving it some thought, Li Youxiang suddenly had an idea and said, "Ruoshi, do you think these ghosts will disperse if we destroy all the human skin lanterns?" Fong Ruoshi pondered for a moment before saying, "It's hard to say. The human skin lantern would not appear for no reason. There must be a goon master of the corpse ghost path causing trouble here. If we want to resolve this situation, we need to find this person and defeat him." Li Youxiang raised her eyebrows and asked, "Is it also because of this bad guy that we can't return to the inn?" Fong Ruoshi nodded. "This goo master has a ghost hit wall goo. We fell for it. Earlier, we seemed to be running on the street, but we were actually walking around the blacksmith shop. This is the ability of ghost hit wall." Li Youxiang hurriedly looked around, her eyes darting around. Seeing this, Fong Ruoshi laughed. "You won't be able to find that scoundrel like this. Li Youxiang asked. Do you have a good idea? Feng Ruoshi flipped her hand and took out a piece of yellow paper. She bit her finger and drew a few lines on the yellow paper before pointing it forward. The yellow paper flew towards the blacksmith shop. It flew in the air, and with a whoosh, it burst into flames. A huge ball of fire appeared. The fireball landed on the blacksmith shop and set it on fire. The blacksmith shop immediately started burning, and soon thick smoke billowed, turning into a sea of fire that crackled with crackling sounds. The huge fire engulfed the human skin lantern, turning it into ashes. Let's go. Feng Ruoshi pulled Li Youxiang and started running. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of them, blocking their path. This person was thin, with a long face, sharp chin, goatee, and a black mole at the corner of his mouth. His eyes were dark red like a snake's, reflecting a cold light. Feng Ruoshi suddenly stopped and said sternly, "Are you the one causing trouble?" She sized him up and fixed her gaze on the black token on his waist. There was a faint Huang character on it. "So you're from the family Huang." Feng Ruoshi's face was frosty. "You ambushed us in the dark jungle. Little bitch, you're quite clever." The goatee man sneered, his eyes fierce. "You actually set fire to the blacksmith shop and used such a simple and crude method to break my ghost labyrinth." Feng Ruoshi sneered. "What a mere ghost labyrinth. It's just an insignificant method of using ghost energy to launch a spiritual attack. It's broken by itself under the influence of fire energy. In the end, it's your incompetence." The goatee man was furious. He licked his tongue and shouted, "Sharp-tongued little bitch, you've entered my ghost labyrinth, so don't even think about escaping. I'll gouge out your eyes, cut off your tongue, and skin you alive. I'll make sure you die with everlasting regret and turn you into a malicious spirit for my use." Feng Ruoshi was furious. "Your family Huang revered the path of ghouls. They're cruel and have harmed countless people. How many people have you killed to refine ghouls?" Li Youxiang came back to her senses and asked, "Did you kill those children just now?" The goatee man said indifferently, "Heaven and earth are heartless, and ghouls exist forever. Who isn't afraid of death? Who doesn't want to live forever?" The family Huang practiced the heavenly Tao and controlled ghouls. They figured out the way to live forever and used it on the people of the world. That's their honor. They should be grateful. Feng Ruoshi sneered. "In that case, it's reasonable for you to torture and kill innocent children." The goatee man chuckled. "You'll also be grateful to me." As soon as he said that, black gas suddenly surged behind the goatee man. It splashed out like ink and turned into thick arms and claws that swept toward the two women. Bloodline divine ability, 100 ghost hands. A cruel and sinister smile appeared on the goatee man's face. Seeing this scene, Feng Ruoshi's eyes flashed and her expression changed drastically. She exclaimed, "So you're 100 ghost hands Huang Yuanqing. I've heard of you, but I didn't expect the family Huang to send you here." Feng Ruoshi used all her strength to activate the driving corpse goo and poured all her primeval essence into the soul-absorbing bell. At once, the soul-absorbing bell shone brightly and met the attacking ghost hands. A loud bang resounded. That strange and unpredictable ghost hands collided with the bell like an iron pillar. Under the collision, the soul-absorbing bell's light quickly dimmed, and Feng Ruoshi was sent flying as if she had suffered a heavy blow. She landed on the ground, and a trace of blood flowed out of the corner of her mouth. "Ruoshi!" Li Youxiang screamed. She was not a battle-type goo master, and her drunken stupor divine ability required wine to be used. Without wine, she had no battle strength at all. At this moment, Li Youxiang felt very useless. Suddenly, Li Youxiang sneered and stared coldly at the goatee man. "Say, you're dead meat." The goatee man was stunned and turned around. A fist rapidly enlarged in his vision and smashed into his nose. Immediately, his nose caved in into his face, and he felt extremely uncomfortable. Chapter 292. Huang Yuanqing covered his nose and rolled a dozen meters away before stopping. "Young master." Li Youxiang was pleasantly surprised and quickly helped Feng Ruoshi to shun the inside. Shun Lian glanced at Feng Ruoshi and asked, "Are your injuries serious?" Feng Ruoshi took a deep breath and said, "It's just a blockage of qi and blood. I'll be fine after a short rest." Shun Lian nodded and looked at Huang Yuanqing from the corner of his eyes. "I thought family Huang's people would come for me directly. Humph, I didn't expect them to start with you first." Standing beside Shun Lian, Li Youxiang felt completely at ease. She put her hands on her hips and said angrily, "Young master, this bastard scared me. He put the pearls in a wine jar and made me feel nauseous." Shun Lian said coldly, "Then he deserves to die." At this time, Huang Yuanqing crawled up. His nose was deeply sunken and his face was completely ruined. However, he was a zombie. This kind of injury would be a serious injury to a normal person, but to him, it was just a scratch. Huang Yuanqing's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He said sternly, "Shun Lian, you are wrong. I am here for you. However, I wanted to play with your two maidservants to warm up." Shun Lian curled his lips and said, "Family Huang abandoned Nine Mountain and chose to ambush me here. This means that Nine Mountain isn't ready yet and needs more time. So they sent you to your death in an attempt to delay me. Is that right?" Huang Yuanqing was unable to restrain his anger. "How do you know that I didn't volunteer to take your dog life? Then you must be the stupidest person in family Huang. Or is everyone in family Huang as stupid as you?" Shun Lian sneered. Li Youxiang laughed involuntarily and echoed, "It must be that everyone in family Huang is stupid. Huang Yuanqing is the stupidest one." Feng Ruoshi also smiled brightly. "I'll kill you all." Huang Yuanqing's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He roared, and thick, ghostly hands rose from his back like hundreds of octopus tentacles. They stood upright and waved, but in the next moment, they suddenly disappeared. "Oh, they're invisible. Even my spiritual sense can't see these ghostly hands." Shun Lian raised his eyebrows in surprise. As Huang Yuanqing approached, the buildings and trees on both sides of the street collapsed one after another, destroyed by some kind of invisible force. On the ground of the street, huge palm prints suddenly appeared one after another, or lines of vicious claw marks juxtaposed together. "Everyone knows that I am the 100 Ghost Hands, but they do not know what the 100 Ghost Hands is. The invisible hand was the ghost hand. It's because it can't be seen and can't be grasped. That's why it's so terrifying." Huang Yuanqing pressed forward. Seeing this, Feng Ruoshi gasped and couldn't help but take a step back. Li Youxiang also shrunk her neck and hid behind Shun Lian. She craned her neck and looked around, but there was not much fear in her eyes. Instead, she was excited to watch a show. At this time, Shun Lian took a step forward. He sneered and said with an indifferent expression, "You know nothing about fear." The whole world suddenly shook. White flames burned fiercely, erupting from Shun Lian's feet into the sky and spreading out, enveloping heaven and earth. The sky and earth burned, and a terrifying aura expanded violently. In the scattered ashes, the door of darkness faintly appeared, towering between heaven and earth and shaking the world. Everything burned and turned into ashes. The white flames swept out like a tide, and the ashes scattered like snow. From the endless aura of decay, from the deep abyss of death, rose a forgotten town. The surrounding scene completely changed. Huang Yuanqing was stunned. He looked around this unfamiliar town, and his expression changed dramatically. He saw that the dilapidated walls were mottled with blood and filled with the lingering color of death. Huang Yuanqing felt a huge uneasiness in his heart. "Welcome to Death Knell Town." Shun Lian smiled eerily, sitting on the frozen throne. With a gentle wave of his hand, the mammoth demon corpse army rushed out, trampling and crushing. The charge of the army was insufferably arrogant and unstoppable. Huang Yuanqing was horrified. "So this is your undead dimension." There was no longer a trace of pride on Huang Yuanqing's face, only deep fear and despair. He watched as the huge undead army rushed over like a tide, completely engulfing him. Swish! Shun Lian waved his hand lightly, withdrew the undead dimension, and appeared in front of Li Youxiang and Feng Ruoxi. The whole process seemed to take a long time, but in fact, it all happened in a few seconds. The seemingly invincible Huang Yuanqing was insta-killed by Shun Lian, and it didn't even cause the slightest ripple. Strong. Li Youxiang's face was full of admiration, and her cheeks were red. She gave a thumbs up. Insta-killed. Feng Ruoxi was deeply shocked. Only by witnessing it with her own eyes could she truly understand how strong Shun Lian was. He was truly invincible. Shun Lian tilted his head and said, "Return to the inn first. No matter what you hear later, don't come out." Understood. Li Youxiang and Feng Ruoxi looked at each other and walked away hand in hand. This time, there was no ghost going around, so they successfully returned to their room. Shun Lian raised his hand and made a grabbing motion, and Huang Yuanqing immediately appeared in a flash. At this moment, Huang Yuanqing's eyes were burning with white flames, and he was already an undead. Shun Lian looked at Huang Yuanqing, and with a thought, the white flames in the depths of Huang Yuanqing's eyes were immediately extinguished. After this adjustment, Huang Yuanqing, who was already eerie, didn't seem to have changed much. "Go, attack the Suilin of Goguryeo." Shun Lian smiled eerily. Huang Yuanqing replied coldly, "Yes, master." Then he turned into a ghostly shadow and rushed to the backyard of the Bright Moon Inn. The Suilin of Goguryeo and his 500 shrimp soldiers and crab generals all lived in the backyard, and they were deliberately separated from Shun Lian. Huang Yuanqing rushed in and killed all the shrimp soldiers and crab generals he saw. The 100 ghost hands swept away thousands of troops, and miserable screams immediately sounded. It was chaos. The shrimp soldiers and crab generals in charge of guarding the night were scattered by Huang Yuanqing's attacks. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! The shrimp soldiers and crab generals who were sleeping soundly were suddenly awakened. They got up one after another, picked up their weapons, and joined the fierce battle. But they had to admit that Huang Yuanqing's 100 ghost hands was indeed impressive. His attacks were completely invisible, and his power was strong and ruthless. He skinned the monsters alive and defeated the shrimp soldiers and crab generals. "Who is it?" Suilin of Goguryeo rushed out, his face full of shock and anger, and coldly glared at Huang Yuanqing. Suilin of Goguryeo was stunned by what he saw. It was because he knew Huang Yuanqing. Suilin of Goguryeo had reported to Family Huang, and Family Huang had also reported back that Family Huang would ambush Shun Lian at Long Lake Town in the gloomy jungle, and the master they sent was Huang Yuanqing. "You?" Suilin of Goguryeo was stunned. What did he mean by attacking his own people? Just as he was about to ask for the reason, Huang Yuanqing was merciless. A ghostly hand swept across, and Suilin of Goguryeo's scales stood up. He roared and used the heaven's net entanglement. Suddenly, the sky was filled with fine silk threads, and an inescapable net was formed in the air, covering Huang Yuanqing's head. Huang Yuanqing was immediately covered by the heaven's net. Suilin of Goguryeo took a deep breath, and a strong force gushed out. He suddenly tightened the heaven's net entanglement, and Huang Yuanqing's limbs were immediately pressed together, and his entire body was tightly bound. At this moment, the Shun Lian suddenly shouted, "Who dares to ambush Suilin of Goguryeo at night?" Before the person arrived, the sword ray arrived first. There was a piercing flash. Huang Yuanqing's head was separated from his neck. Chapter 293. Suilin of Goguryeo's face was tense, and countless question marks appeared on top of his head. Huang Yuanqing, Suilin of Goguryeo, breathed heavily, looked at Shun Lian, and said with a bewildered expression, "Why did you kill him? You should have kept him alive and interrogated him." Shun Lian laughed and said, "This person is unusually fierce. I was worried about everyone's safety, so I killed him without thinking too much." He first pointed at the dead shrimp soldiers and crab generals, paused, and then laughed loudly. "You and I will work together to kill the enemy. We are invincible. Happy, happy." His voice shook the wilderness. The word "work together" made Suilin of Goguryeo's mouth twitch. Then, Suilin of Goguryeo, who was depressed, sent a letter to family Huang overnight, questioning Huang Yuanqing about the night attack. Family Huang had set up an ambush in Long Lake Town, so naturally, they did not only send Huang Yuanqing, but also other spies. However, these spies were all on the periphery and did not witness the entire battle. They only heard Shun Lian's long cry and learned that Huang Yuanqing had been killed by Shun Lian and Suilin of Goguryeo. How could this be? They hurriedly sent a letter back. Thus, Nining Mountain received 2 letters one after another the next day, but the conclusions were completely different. Family Huang's higher-ups were instantly boiling. Which side is Suilin of Goguryeo on? The Huang family's trust in the Water Qilin King plummeted due to him causing trouble again and again. Voices of doubt rose up, and they no longer dared to believe in this capricious monster. A person's reputation is like a tree's shadow. Suilin of Goguryeo is a fence-sitter who changes his mind when the wind blows. You can't scheme with him, Family Huang Yuanwu said angrily with a heavy face. He clearly trusted Family Huang's spies more. Bailey Xingshu's gaze went back and forth between the 2 letters. Family head, please calm down. Suilin of Goguryeo is cunning and unpredictable, and we never plan to count on him. It doesn't matter if he is here or not. He paused. Shun Lian and his group will enter Gu Mountain after they leave Gloomy Jungle. Gu Mountain's area is a mix of good and snakes, and there are a lot of desperados. Gu are strange, mysterious, and can't be underestimated. I have already notified Gu Mountain and Shun of Goguryeo's head. Even though those people might not be able to defeat Shun Lian, they could still create some trouble for Shun Lian and delay his journey. Huang Yuanwu nodded and asked, when will the Blood Sea and Corpse Mountain formation be completed? Bailey Xingshu, at least 10 days, but no more than 20 days. Huang Yuanwu pondered for a moment. Is there any progress at Fayuan Temple? Bailey Xingshu, Fayuan Temple will send the angry monk to fight. However, the angry monk's mind is not complete. Once he leaves the demon-subduing tower and loses the suppression, he will become a wild beast that can't distinguish between friend and foe. The Fayuan Temple's monks can only jointly escort him to a designated location. It will take at least half a month for him to arrive. Huang Yuanwu couldn't help but sigh. We must ensure that the angry monk first fights with Shun Lian. Once both of them are injured, we will lure Shun Lian into the Blood Sea and Corpse Mountain formation and kill him in one fell swoop. Bailey Xingshu, family head, please rest assured. Fayuan Temple has already agreed to my plan. Before Shun Lian arrives at Nining Mountain, he will definitely encounter the angry monk first. Accordingly, we must hand Xiezhen over to Fayuan Temple. Huang Yuanwu raised his eyebrows. That Xiezhen has been found? Bailey Xingshu, Xiezhen left Wushang Tavern half a year ago and is hiding in Motionless Mountain. There's only one fox demon by his side. Fox demon. Huang Yuanwu's expression changed. Could it be that this Xiezhen has an affair with the fox demon? Bailey Xingshu was speechless as he laughed. There is indeed such a thing. Huang Yuanwu's expression became playful. The Buddha heart Gu actually chose a dissolute wanderer. Interesting. It is said that monks are disillusioned with the world of mortals. I think that the more one stays in a temple, the more they are reluctant to part with the world of mortals. Bailey Xingshu smiled, but didn't say anything. Huang Yuanwu thought for a moment and gritted his teeth. The most important thing right now is to delay Shun Lian's journey. Send a message to Huang Yuanpei and use the good and evil brothers. We must delay Shun Lian at all costs. After walking out of the gloomy jungle, they arrived at Tangwang Mountain, Li Youxiang's hometown. Shun Lian's group was warmly welcomed by the Li family. They even took out their most precious wine to treat them. More than a year ago, the head of the Li family, Li Nanhong, was forced to send Li Youxiang to New Kuan. At that time, he was naturally unwilling. Later on, New Kuan became prosperous, and the Li family benefited from it and made a lot of money. Li Nanhong was proud of his life. He bragged to everyone about how wise he was and how discerning he was. He had long seen that Shun Lian would become a great person, and Li Youxiang, the prodigal daughter and drunkard, also became successful. She returned to her hometown in glory. The elders in the family all had flattering smiles on their faces and didn't dare to reprimand her. She was indeed in the limelight. Everyone was very happy, except for Suilin of Goguryeo. Family Huang replied. He actually turned the tables and asked why he joined forces with Shan Lian to kill Huang Yuanqing. Suilin of Goguryeo almost exploded with anger. It was Huang Yuanqing who came to kill him first. Okay? You guys are so unreasonable. Although he was angry, Suilin of Goguryeo still read the letter to the end. Family Huang proposed that in order to prove that he was still on Family Huang's side, he asked him to slow down the journey and walk a road that could be finished in 1 day for 2 days. What does Family Huang mean? Suilin of Goguryeo couldn't help but become suspicious. The next day, Shunlian's group set off again. Li Youxiang didn't stay at Tangwang Mountain. She pestered them and brought a lot of good wine. She threatened to show off her skills at Nining Mountain and take revenge. A few days later, they arrived at Lonely Mountain. Solitude was the meaning of a monarch, not solitude. Lonely Mountain was as majestic as a sword, towering into the clouds. It faced the south and stretched for more than 600 li. It had the grandeur of a monarch overlooking the world. Lonely Mountain was lush with vegetation. There were pines, cypresses, and bamboos. There were many plums, willows, and mulberries. Unfortunately, most of the plants were thorns. Thorns grew wildly on Lonely Mountain. The thorns were poisonous and made it difficult for people to move. There were only a few habitable areas, which were divided between the demon race and the human race. Inside Lonely Mountain, humans and demons mix together and form an alliance. This is the Gushan League that people often talk about. It can be said that dragons and snakes are mixed together, and there is no discrimination in education. Feng Ruoshi introduced seriously, the Gushan League occupies Lonely Mountain's territory and built Lonely Mountain Gate. Anyone who enters or exits must go through strict inspection. Li Youxiang curiously asked, "How do they go through strict inspection?" Feng Ruoshi chuckled. "The lower the entrance fee or exit fee, the stricter the inspection will be. You won't be able to enter or leave." Li Youxiang was unconvinced. "Then if I don't have money, won't I be able to pass through Lonely Mountain Gate?" Feng Ruoshi smiled. "Not necessarily. Lonely Mountain Gate is an illusory thing created by the riddle-guessing Gu. If you can guess the riddle, you can naturally pass through freely." Li Youxiang sniffed. "What if I can't guess it?" Chapter 294. Hearing this, Li Youxiang was immediately dissatisfied. She raised her chin and said proudly, "Humph, isn't it just riddles? What's so difficult about it? I'm going to guess until the gate of the Lonely Mountain goes bankrupt." As they spoke, the group entered the boundary of the Lonely Mountain. The road ahead became narrower and narrower, and thorns could be seen everywhere on the overgrown roadside. But unlike the thorns in other places, the thorns here were abnormally thick and reddish-brown in color. They were covered with long and sharp barbs. Shun Lian touched the thorns gently. They were very cold to the touch. He thought to himself, this kind of thorns is a plant of the cold attribute and is very difficult to burn. No wonder the Gushan League didn't destroy them. At this moment, Shun Lian lifted his head and looked into the distance. Suddenly, he saw a huge gate between the two mountains, blocking the road. Looking closer, the gate was made of purple stone. An exaggeratedly large human face was painted on the gate. A person wearing a bamboo hat was sitting on a deck chair in front of the gate. The hat covered his face and his legs were crossed, his calves shaking rhythmically. Feng Ruoshi walked forward and coughed softly. The person quickly took off the bamboo hat, revealing a rat face. That's right, a rat face. It turned out that this was a rat demon. He had 2 pointed ears, a curled beard, and a pair of green bean-like eyes that blinked cunningly. Li Youxiang was startled. "Ah, a rat demon?" The rat demon stood up and looked at Shun Lian's group. His gaze suddenly fell on Suilin of Goguryeo, as if he knew the king of the Wei River water demons. He couldn't help but become respectful and said with a flattering smile, "Welcome, Suilin of Goguryeo, and all of you." Suilin of Goguryeo raised his eyebrows proudly. After glancing at Shun Lian, he laughed and said, "Oh, is the old chief?" The rat demon lowered his head and replied, Everything is fine. Anger appeared on Feng Ruashi's face. She suddenly said, "How dare you? You have eyes but can't see. Why don't you salute the King of the North?" King of the North? The rat monster's breathing suddenly stopped, and his expression changed as he stared at Shun Lian. His mung bean-like eyes flickered quickly, and he quickly said with a smile, "Lonely Mountain certainly welcomes the King of the North." Shun Lian was disdainful. He was more interested in the gate of the Lonely Mountain. The human face on the gate was full of changes of expression, revealing emotions such as happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy. It was quite mysterious. The rat monster chuckled and said, "Lone Mountain has its own rules. You have to pay the entrance fee or guess the answer to the riddle. No matter who comes to Lone Mountain, everyone is treated equally." Shun Lian, how do you guess the riddle? The rat demon said, "Riddles have different levels of difficulty. The 4 levels of heaven, earth, black, and yellow correspond to different costs. If you get the riddle wrong, you will have to pay the price." Li Youxiang drank a mouthful of wine and asked, "What is the price of a yellow-level riddle?" The rat demon said, "Cut off an arm or a leg. Choose." Li Youxiang took a deep breath and glared at him. "Guess which level of difficulty you have to solve to enter the door?" The rat demon said, "Yellow level is enough." Li Youxiang felt strange. Then why are there 4 levels of difficulty? The rat demon laughed and asked, "Don't tell me you don't know how the Gushin League came about?" The Water Qilin King also laughed out loud and said tirelessly, "Many years ago, Lone Mountain was in a state of disunity and was extremely chaotic. Humans fought each other, demons fought each other, and blood flowed endlessly. One day, a riddle-guessing old man suddenly appeared. He raised the rank of riddle-guessing Gu and won through riddle-guessing. He defeated his opponents one by one and unified Lone Mountain, establishing the Gushin League and becoming the first alliance leader. You might ask, why would those people or demons play riddles with the riddle-guessing old man? That is because there are huge benefits to successfully guessing the riddles. Moreover, the benefits of different levels of difficulty also increase. Especially the heaven-level riddles, the benefits are beyond imagination. Li Youxiang held her breath and looked at Shun Lian. Shun Lian was also listening with interest and asked casually, "What are the benefits?" The rat demon lightly patted Lone Mountain's door and smiled. "Please look here." Immediately, black words appeared on Lone Mountain's door. They were divided into 3 columns, representing the difficulty level, price, and benefits of the riddle. Yellow level, broken arm or leg, entry or exit. Black level, offering one's most beloved item, an innate treasure. Earth level, offering one's most beloved person, an innate treasure. Heaven level, offering one's everything, an innate treasure. Everyone held their breaths and looked at it. Li Youxiang was puzzled. Magic treasure, spirit treasure, innate treasure, what are they? The rat demon explained seriously. They are the names of treasures, representing different levels of treasures. For example, a demon weapon is a powerful weapon forged from a certain part of a demon's body. In Lonely Mountain, we call a demon weapon with ordinary killing power as an acquired magic weapon. A demon weapon with the ability to move mountains and drain seas is an acquired spiritual treasure. A demon weapon with the ability to destroy heaven and earth is an acquired supreme treasure. Different from demon weapons, those powerful innate treasures are postnatal magic treasures, and so on. Hearing this, Shun Lian raised his eyebrows and asked, "Has anyone ever gotten a postnatal supreme treasure?" The rat demon's face showed great pride. Riddle-guessing old man once got one. It's the most precious treasure of the Gushin League. Shun Lian couldn't help but sneer. A postnatal supreme treasure is a weapon that can destroy heaven and earth. With such a treasure in hand, why would the Gushin League be content? The rat demon couldn't help but be speechless. Suilin of Goguryeo laughed. "King of the North, you don't know. The Gushin League does have a postnatal supreme treasure. Unfortunately, it can only be used 3 times before it becomes useless. Therefore, the Gushin League regards it as an inherited treasure and won't use it easily." The rat demon was just a gatekeeper and obviously didn't know the secret. But Sualin of Goguryeo knew it clearly. So that's it. Shun Lian chuckled and looked at the lone mountain gate, speechless. If some beggar doesn't want to live anymore and comes here to guess riddles, and luckily solves a heaven-level riddle, then he can destroy heaven and earth. The rat demon heard this and laughed. Impossible! I have been guarding this gate for nearly 200 years and have never seen anyone who can solve a profound-level riddle, let alone an earth-level or heaven-level riddle. Li Youxiong was shocked. Ah, a profound-level riddle is so difficult. The rat demon's expression turned solemn, and he said seriously, "It is so difficult. I advise you not to try it easily." Li Youxiong muttered, "If I guess wrong and run away, you can't do anything to me." The rat demon immediately clasped his hands behind his back and said, "Then you are underestimating the riddle-guessing goo. Before you start the riddle-guessing goo will first take the price. It is an advance payment. Only if you succeed can you get the price back." Li Youxiong was confused. Sualin of Goguryeo said with deep meaning, "There's no point in talking. Why don't you try it? Didn't you say you want to guess until the Lone Mountain Gate goes bankrupt?" Chapter 295. At this time, Shun Lian smiled and pressed Li Youxiong's shoulder, saying, "Let's try it together." Li Youxiong's spirit was lifted, and she said with great joy, "Okay, I'll team up with you. Today, we'll make the door of Lonely Mountain cry." The rat monster stretched out his hand and made a gesture of invitation, saying, "Please stand in front of the door of Lonely Mountain and put your hand on the door." Shun Lian and Li Youxiong did as they were told. When their palms touched the door of Lonely Mountain, the door of Lonely Mountain suddenly shone brightly and shrouded them. Strangely, Fang Ruoshi and Sualin of Goguryeo, who were not far away, did not see the door of Lonely Mountain shining brightly. What they saw was that Shun Lian and Li Youxiong suddenly disappeared from their sight. The rat monster was not surprised, and he said with a smile, "When the riddles are being guessed, the guider will be completely isolated. We can't see or hear what the riddles are." In front of the door, Shun Lian narrowed his eyes slightly. The light of the door of Lonely Mountain gradually converged and turned into a huge whiteboard. The human face became clearer, and it was no different from a living person. The human face slowly opened its eyes and stared at Shun Lian and Li Youxiong with empty eyes, saying, "Please choose the difficulty level of the riddles." Shun Lian thought for a moment. Yellow level. The human face said, "You two will guess the riddles together, and the price will be doubled. Please choose to break your hand or your leg." Shun Lian said, "Break your hand." In the next moment, a strange thing happened. Shun Lian's left hand left his body without any pain and disappeared into the door of Lonely Mountain in a flash. Li Youxiong's left hand was also gone. Shun Lian calmed down a little and looked at his left arm. The smooth incision was shining brightly, and he could even see the internal tissues, such as blood vessels and bones. What was even more strange was that he could still control his left hand, and the feeling of moving his fingers was still there. This scene scared Li Youxiong so much that her breathing became short, and her face became pale. She really regretted bragging. This was not a riddle-guessing game, but a life-and-death game. Right at this moment, the human face said, "The yellow level puzzle is about 5 aunties working the whole day. After picking a bunch of corn on the cob, they couldn't split it evenly no matter how hard they tried. In the end, they fell asleep from exhaustion. At night, one of the aunties got up quietly. After throwing a corn cob into the pot, it could be divided into 5 portions. She hid her portion and went back to sleep. Then, the second auntie got up and threw a corn on the cob, which happened to be divided into 5 portions. She kept her portion as well. It was the same for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th monkeys. After eating one, he could divide it into 5 portions. He also put away his portion. How many corn cobs are there in the pile?" Hearing this, Li Youxiong felt a headache coming on. This is a math problem. Li Youxiong counted with her fingers, but her fingers were not enough. She felt a little hopeless. Was a yellow-level puzzle really that difficult? Shun Lian almost laughed out loud. This was a classic problem of 5 monkeys dividing peaches, 16 sailors dividing coconuts, and 23 pirates dividing treasures. The calculation method was traceable. After a while, Li Youxiang felt a headache coming on. She gave up and sighed. "Young master, I will listen to my father in the future and study math well." Shun Lian smiled and looked at the human face. He replied, "At least 3,121 corn cobs." The human face smiled. "Correct." Shua, the lonely mountain gate flashed. Shun Lian's disappeared left hand returned, as if it had never left. The human face said, "Congratulations on obtaining the right to enter the lonely mountain gate. Do you want to continue the challenge?" Shun Lian's mouth twitched. "Give me another black level riddle." The human face said, "Please give us your favorite item." Li Youxiang took out a jar of wine and said, "This is a 600-year-old wine passed down from our ancestors. There is only one jar in the world. Is it okay?" The human face's eyes flashed and released a divine light on Li Youxiang. "This wine is indeed your favorite item." Shun Lian thought for a while and said, "My favorite item should be this pendant on my waist." The human face's eyes flashed and fell on Shun Lian's body. It said slowly, "Your favorite item is this pendant." Li Youxiang couldn't help but open her eyes wide and looked at the jade pendant carefully. It was just a piece of beautiful jade, but it was the young master's favorite item. He loved it more than those insects. Then the 600-year-old wine and the jade pendant were taken away. The human face said, "The black level riddle is that Old Li suspects that his wife and Old Wang next door are having an affair. He keeps an eye on his wife all day long, ready to catch them at any time. One night, his wife quietly got up and went out. Old Li followed her and found that his wife went into the woods. The woods were too dark. Old Li lost his wife and had to go home. When he got home, he found his wife lying on the bed sleeping. Old Li immediately woke up his wife and asked her where she had gone. His wife said she didn't go anywhere. The next night, Old Li's wife quietly got up and went out again. Old Li followed her and found that his wife still went into the woods. The woods were too dark. Old Li lost her again and had to go home. When he got home, Old Li found his wife lying on the bed sleeping. So, Old Li took a knife and killed his wife. Why? Hearing this, Li Youxiang was confused. She scratched her ears and cheeks and asked, "What kind of riddle is this? Can you give me a hint?" The human face was silent. Li Youxiang pulled Shun Lian's clothes and asked, "Old Li killed his wife because he found out that his wife and Old Wang next door were having an affair?" Shun Lian touched his nose and smiled. "How did you know?" Li Youxiang scratched her head and said, "Otherwise, why would Old Li kill his wife?" Shun Lian said, "Old Li could also be a lunatic, right?" Li Youxiang thought about it and agreed. Shun Lian raised his head and answered with a smile, "The riddle is that Old Li is a tortoise and his wife is a rabbit." The human face smiled. "Correct." The pure Li Youxiang was stupefied. What is this situation? A tortoise killed a rabbit. Every tortoise has a rabbit living in its heart. So profound. Swoosh. Lone Mountain Gate flashed with light. The 600-year-old wine nectar and jade pendant appeared and returned to their owner. The human face said, "Congratulations on solving the black level riddle and obtaining an innate treasure. Riddle Goo will bestow the most suitable innate treasure according to the winner's wishes or personal condition. Who will receive the prize?" Shun Lian pushed Li Youxiang forward and smiled. "Give it to her." Li Youxiang was overjoyed. "Thank you, young master. You are the best." The human face asked, "What kind of treasure do you want?" Li Youxiang was extremely excited, asking back, "Any kind of treasure?" The human face said, "Riddle Goo will satisfy your wish or tailor a treasure for you." Li Youxiang thought about it and said, "Then do as you see fit." The human face's eyes widened a little. The divine light in its eyes concentrated on Li Youxiang's body. A moment later, the human face opened its mouth and spat out a three-legged wine vessel. It was shaped like a square pool and had an unrestrained shape. The edges were carved with exquisite bird patterns, and it gave off a dazzling light as it landed in Li Youxiang's hand. The human face said, "This treasure was born from bejeweled nectar and is called Wine Pool, derived from the meaning of wine pool and meat forest. It can refine all things into wine and has endless uses. When you advance to Legendary Goo Master, you can use Wine Pool to accumulate endless good wine and create a legendary world. Chapter 296. Li Youxiang obtained the wine pool and was overjoyed. She laughed. Riddle guessing Goo. Everyone has a share. Be more generous and give young master a treasure as well. Don't forget, we paid the price of 2 people. The human face said righteously, but there is only one riddle, and there are 2 people solving it. The price to pay is naturally higher. Stingy. Li Youxiang pouted and said with dissatisfaction. The human face asked, do you want to continue? Shun Lian pondered for a while and said, another Earth-level puzzle. The human face asked, the price of the Earth-level riddle is your loved ones. Have they come? Shun Lian's eyes flashed and shook his head. No. The human face said, the premise of the riddle is to be able to pay the price in advance. If the condition is not met, you cannot continue. Shun Lian's mouth twitched. Then Shun will directly challenge the heaven-level riddle. Li Youxiang instantly held her breath. The human face said, the price of the heaven-level riddle is to sacrifice everything, including your life. Are you sure you want to challenge it? Shun Lian said, yes. As soon as he said that, a black light bound Shun Lian, making him unable to move. The human face said, the heaven-level riddle is from the moment you were born until now. How many times have you blinked? The world fell silent. Li Youxiang exclaimed, what kind of riddle is this? How can anyone remember to blink their eyes? The human face remained silent. Shun Lian was also slightly dazed and laughed involuntarily. He thought the heaven-level riddle would involve the mysteries of the universe or the ultimate truth, but the result was unexpected. The most difficult riddle was the simplest accumulation problem. In your life, how many times have you blinked, sneezed, walked? How many heartbeats? How many times have you breathed? How many times have you burped? How many times have you eaten? How many times have you sweated? How many times have you slept? How many strands of hair have you lost, etc.? The most difficult riddle is not in the distant universe, but the bits and pieces of your journey. The most difficult thing in the world is to understand yourself. As expected of a heaven-level riddle, this is a riddle that only God knows the answer to. Shun Lian slowly closed his eyes. His mind sank into the strategy space as he sat on the double-faced throne. His brain worked intensely, understanding the world, understanding oneself. There are no more secrets. A moment later, Shun Lian opened his eyes and took a deep breath, replying 140,169,628 times. The human face's eyes shined. Correct. Oh heavens, this is amazing. Li Youxiang was stunned for a moment before she was completely shocked. She suddenly jumped up and cheered. Shun Lian chuckled lightly, as if nothing had happened. The human face said, congratulations on solving a heaven-level puzzle. You are rewarded with an innate cardinal treasure. Riddle Goo will bestow the most suitable innate treasure for the winner according to the winner's wishes or personal condition. Which one of you will be receiving the prize? Li Youxiang said, Youxiang Goo, of course, the reward. The Goo Goo Goo, the treasure Goo is reward, or the Goo 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 Shun Lian. What treasures do you have? The human face. This is a heavenly secret. I cannot say, but you can make a request. For example, if you want a certain type of treasure, the Goo Goo will choose the most suitable one according to your condition. Shun Lian squinted. In that case, I will not make a request. The Goo Goo will make the reward for me. The human face's eyes widened. The divine light in its eyes concentrated on Shun Lian. It said slowly, you have endless wisdom and strength. Your heart is intertwined with blazing light and darkness. Your hands hold death and life. Your head is surrounded by the belief of all living beings. The sky is yours to soar. The earth rumbles because of you. Flames dance because of you. After a long while, the Goo of Riddles finally chose the most suitable innate treasure for Shun Lian. The human face slowly opened its mouth and spat out a ball of light the size of a grain of rice. It flashed and disappeared in between Shun Lian's brows. Shun Lian's head shook violently. The next moment, his divine sense entered a mysterious space. It was a huge, empty room. All the colors were pure white and flawless like an ice sculpture. The human face said, "This treasure is called the monarch's treasure trove. Only people with the monarch's aura are qualified to possess and use it. The monarch's treasure trove has many mystical and powerful abilities, like unlimited storage space, perfect replication projection, the blessing of creation growth, and so on. It has endless uses." Shun Lian's expression changed. He had an expression of, "I have already taken off my pants. You're going to show it to me." He was speechless. "I can't attack. I can't defend. You gave me a storage cabinet." The human face said, "The monarch's treasure trove has many uses. You have to believe in the Goo-Goo's judgment. You have to know, the Goo-Goo that holds countless riddles also holds the supreme truth, the ever-changing mysteries of heaven." Shun Lian could only chuckle. The human face said, "Game over, goodbye, you two riddlers." The lone mountain door suddenly shone brightly. The dazzling light shone over. Shun Lian and Li Youxiang could not help but squint their eyes. The next moment, the light that shrouded them faded, and the two reappeared in everyone's line of sight. The rat demon, Feng Ruoshi, Suilin of Goguryeo, and the others who were waiting turned their heads at the same time. Their expressions changed greatly. They saw that the exaggeratedly huge human face on the lone mountain door, for some reason, had turned red. It was like a shy girl, blushing. Seeing this scene, Feng Ruoshi, Suilin of Goguryeo, and the others were extremely astonished. They did not understand what was going on. The rat demon, however, had a drastic change in expression. He blurted out, "Oh heavens, the lone mountain door actually blushed. Could it be?" The rat demon was too shocked. When he said this, he was so excited that he could not breathe smoothly. Suilin of Goguryeo felt an inexplicable uneasiness in her heart. She said, "Could it be what?" The rat demon took a deep breath, trembling all over, and said, "The last time the lone mountain door blushed, it was because the riddle-guessing old man solved the heaven-level puzzle. This time, it blushed. If there is no accident," Suilin of Goguryeo suddenly understood, and her heart skipped a beat. Her flickering eyes suddenly focused on Shun Lian, who appeared, and her lips suddenly tightened to the point that they almost split open. The rat demon was so excited that he rushed forward and said respectfully, "May I ask if the King of the North has solved the heaven-level puzzle?" Without waiting for Shun Lian to answer, Li Youxiang laughed and said, "Do you still need to ask? Don't you know who my young master is? It's just a heaven-level puzzle. Do you really think it can baffle my young master?" Even though the rat demon had such a guess, the moment he got confirmation, he still could not help holding his breath uncontrollably. With a great shock on his face, he hurriedly took out a copper bell from his arms. The lone mountain door blushed. The rat demon shouted at the copper bell, and then shook it desperately. Dang! Dang! The sound of the copper bell was not very loud, but it spread far away in some kind of wonderful rhythm, as if it had spread all over the lone mountain. Chapter 297. Gushan Li Headquarters, Bramble Castle. It was a blood-red plant castle without a single brick or tile. The entire structure was made of intertwined brambles. Vines covered the walkways and pavilions, leading to the antique main hall. Flags were everywhere inside and outside the main hall. The bramble flag fluttered. Inside the hall, a huge bramble flag and a bramble throne stood out. Bramble was the king. Bramble was the crown. In Lonely Mountain, Bramble represented supremacy. The leader of the Gushan League was also known as the Bramble King. However, the title of Bramble King was too ostentatious and could easily cause trouble. Therefore, since the establishment of the Gushan League, all the leaders had always kept a low profile and called themselves the League leader. The current leader of the Gushan League was the fourth generation. Riddle-guessing Old Man was the first League leader. The second generation was Riddle-guessing Old Man's eldest disciple. The third generation was the eldest disciple's son-in-law. They were all famous heroes of their time. When it came to the fourth League leader, it became a monster. The fourth League leader had a close relationship with Riddle-guessing Old Man. She was Riddle-guessing Old Man's last disciple. Her original body was a bramble demon on Lonely Mountain. When this demon first gained intelligence, she played around Lonely Mountain. Riddle-guessing old man defeated and subdued her. He trained her as a disciple and named her Jing Exine, which meant the heart of brambles. Riddle-guessing old man loved her and treated her as his own. Because riddle-guessing old man called himself Old, the fourth generation's name was Old Jingxin. She was known as the Old League Leader. However, the Old League Leader was not old at all. Old Jingxin was actually very young, only 1,500 years old. For the first 900 years, she was a plant. Later, she could move freely. Her roots were like feet, running all over the ground. After running for 400 years, it was less than 200 years before she truly transformed into a human. When Shunlian's group arrived at the gate of Lonely Mountain, Old Jingxin, the Vice League leader, and the 8 division leaders were discussing an important matter in the inner hall of Bramble Castle. The Old Jingxin was 175 meters tall, and her face was that of a 13 or 14-year-old lowly. She sat on the throne of thorns, wearing a bright red cheongsam with a slit on both sides. When the wind blew, the hem of the cheongsam would lift up, revealing 2 snow-white, slender, and enchanting thighs. At this moment, Old Jingxin was slightly excited. He tilted his head and asked, "Old man, have you found him?" "Old Alliance Master, we've found him." The white-faced, beardless old man next to the throne of thorns smiled and replied. The moment he opened his mouth, his voice sounded like that of a duck. This person was called Old Swindler, and he was a eunuch. "Where is Chu Qitian?" "Central Plains, Cloud Prefecture, Sword Emperor Mountain." Old Jingxin raised his eyebrows and asked in surprise, "Chu Qitian is from an aristocratic family?" The old man's expression turned sour as he nodded and said, "The Chu clan of the Cloud State is one of the 9 clans of the Central Plains. Chu Qitian is the son of the Chu clan's leader. His status is extremely honorable." Old Jingxin snorted, "I want him dead." Hearing this, the Vice Alliance Master and the 8 leaders smiled bitterly. Old Jingxin said in a serious tone, "Back in the day, when I was still a thorn growing on the southern plains, that Chu Qitian passed by Lone Mountain while sightseeing. I don't know how he found me, but he purposely ran in front of me and peed on me. He even laughed and said that he was nourishing me, and that when I transform into a human in the future, I should remember to thank him for his pee. This is a great humiliation. I swear that I will kill Chu Qitian to vent the hatred in my heart." The Vice Alliance Master held back his laughter and said, "Alliance Master has suffered a great grievance, we understand. But that Chu Qitian is already a legendary Goom Master and has the backing of the powerful Chu clan of Cloud Prefecture. This small lone mountain is weak and cannot afford to offend him." Old Jingxin curled his lips and said, "I don't care. You have to think of a way to kill Chu Qitian no matter what. Otherwise, this position of Alliance Master will be given to whoever you want." The same trick again? The Vice Alliance Master and the 8 leaders' faces twitched. They were speechless and smiled bitterly. Every time Old Jingxin threw a tantrum, he would use this matter to threaten them. The Vice Alliance Master quickly gave the old man a meaningful glance. The old man understood and smiled like he was coaxing a child. "Long live Alliance Master. You are the most beautiful thorn flower in the world. If you don't become the Alliance Master, who is qualified to be the Alliance Master?" The Vice Alliance Master and the 8 leaders agreed. "Long live Alliance Master. You are the most beautiful person in the world." Old Jingxin showed a happy smile and said, "But Chu Qitian still needs to be killed. I will castrate him first, then throw him into a manure pit to nourish him. I will let him deeply understand the feeling of being nourished, then I will kill him." Alliance Master is brilliant. The old man immediately gave him a thumbs up with a worshipful expression. He said loudly, "To be able to come up with such a brilliant idea, it proves that the Alliance leader's wisdom is unparalleled in the world. Chu Qitian is not worth mentioning. Letting him live for 2 more days is your magnanimity. Pity Chu Qitian." Old Jingxin seemed to be very happy and laughed. "You are right. Letting Chu Chi-tian live for 2 more days is my magnanimity, huh? Alliance Master is magnanimous. The Vice Alliance Master and the 8 leaders were speechless, but they praised at the same time. Old Jingxin was satisfied. He got up, waved his hand, and left. The old man walked with him and smiled. Alliance Master, the peacock in Nanshan Plain has laid eggs. Do you want to go and see? Old Jingxin immediately said, Let's go. That stinky peacock used to poop on me. I have wanted to roast it for a long time. The Vice Alliance Master and the others watched until old Jingxin and the old man were far away. They all sighed in relief and shook their heads bitterly. The Vice Alliance Master coughed and said, Let's start the meeting. The most important thing is Family Huang's letter. The Shunlian will arrive at Lonely Mountain in a few days. Family Huang has offered a high reward for us to take the Shunlian's head. What do you all think? One of the leaders said, Family Huang's price is quite high. Besides, if we kill the Shunlian, we can get the king's jade. Another person shook his head and said, We must not get involved. Once the war starts, it will not end until one of us dies. The war between the Lin and Huang families was tragic. Both sides suffered great losses. The Yuanshui River in the north was also destroyed. Lonely Mountain is weak and cannot afford to fight. Another leader said, I heard that the Shunlian and the Suilin of Goguryeo came together. They only have 500 shrimp soldiers and crab generals under their command. Many of them were killed on the way. If they really only have so few people, it's not impossible to kill them on our Lonely Mountains territory. The fourth leader laughed and said, Don't forget that even the golden kill leader in Muyu is no match for the Shunlian. It is unwise to go against him. Please be careful. So what if the Shunlian is powerful? We have the innate supreme treasure, the thorny death spear. We can kill him with one stab. The thorny death spear can only be used 3 times before it becomes useless. Moreover, it has already been used once. Do you want to lose all your money? If the old doesn't go, the new won't come. If the thorny death spear is useless, we can just guess the riddles and get a new innate supreme treasure. It's easy for you to talk, but when you squat, your ass will naturally open. Let me ask you, who can solve the sky-level riddles? Are you going? Or is your wife going? The leaders of the 8 divisions spoke one by one, arguing endlessly. In the end, it was half and half. Either birds die for food and men die for wealth, or watch the fire burn across the river without offending either side. After hearing this, the vice leader's mouth tightened. Obviously, the leaders of the 8 divisions were divided into 2 camps. One was the human race, and the other was the demon race. They were all in a tight group, but it was the human race who wanted to kill the Shunlian. Chapter 298. When the Vice Alliance leader said this, he deliberately paused, but the 8 division leaders all pricked up their ears. According to the rules of the Gushin League, the deputy leader had the final say. Once he made a decision, it was the highest order and result, and even the leader had no right to change it. The deputy leader said, The battle between Family Huang and Shunlian is of great importance. Whoever wins will be the lord of the northern region, and the Lonely Mountain will have to submit to one of them. Unfortunately, the Shunlian is attacking Family Huang, and the Lonely Mountain is the only way. No matter how we avoid it, we will be involved in the end. When the Shunlian arrives at the gate of the Lonely Mountain, we have to make a choice. My choice is, at this moment, a strange ripple suddenly washed over like a ripple in a lake, interrupting the deputy leader's words. In an instant, a bright flash of lightning flashed through everyone's mind. The next moment, the gate of the Lonely Mountain blushed. The deputy leader and the 8 leaders exclaimed at the same time. They repeated the message sent by the rat monster, but all of them held their breath and were shocked to the extreme. The gate of the Lonely Mountain blushed. Did someone solve the heaven-level puzzle and obtain the primordial treasure? Almost in the next moment, everyone realized something and their expressions changed dramatically. The inner hall was dead silent. Everyone was trying their best to digest this unexpected message. Let's go and have a look. Someone spoke. The deputy leader's mind wavered for a while. Then he took a deep breath, forced himself to calm down, and led everyone out. In front of the lonely mountain, the rat monster put away the copper bell. Fong Ruashi looked serious and frowned. "What did you do?" The rat monster replied. "The king of the north solved the heaven-level puzzle and obtained the primordial treasure. This is a big matter, and I have to report it to the Gushin League." Turning around, the rat monster bowed his head in front of Shun Lian and said respectfully, "King of the north, please wait here for a moment." Shun Lian nodded and smiled faintly. "Well, the guest should follow the host's wishes. Shun also wants to meet the Gushin League." Suilin of Goguryeo squeezed out a smile and couldn't help asking, "King of the North, did you really obtain the primordial treasure? What is it?" Shun Lian smiled. "It's just a little thing. I don't know what it can do." Suddenly, he changed the topic. "Suilin of Goguryeo, you know the Gushin League very well. To tell me about it." The water-cheeling king choked as he coughed and laughed dryly. "This king is actually not that familiar with the Lone Mountain Alliance. I only know that the Lone Mountain Alliance has 8 divisions. The true leader is not the leader, but the vice leader." "Oh." Shun Lian was slightly surprised. Fong Ruashi said, "Young master, the position of leader of the Lone Mountain League is inherited, while the vice leader is elected by the 8 divisions. The leader's power is limited, and the vice leader has the most power. However, the leader has 2 privileges. One is that if the leader is dissatisfied with the vice leader, he can remove the vice leader from his position and the 8 divisions will nominate someone else." Shun Lian raised his eyebrows and immediately thought of the constitutional monarchy. The leader was the king, and the deputy was the prime minister. Lonely Mountain, where humans and demons mix, has established such an open-minded system of power. Interesting. Shun Lian couldn't help but show a playful expression. While they were talking, the gate of Lonely Mountain opened and a group of 9 people appeared from behind the gate. The rat monster hurried forward and knelt on one knee. "Greetings, deputy leader. Greetings, leader of the 8. Rise." The vice leader waved his hand and raised his head to look at the Lone Mountain Gate. Sure enough, that person's face was red as a monkey's butt. He hurriedly looked around and at the same time asked, "Who solved the heaven-rank puzzle?" The rat monster glanced at Shun Lian and said, "This is the king of the north. He solved the heaven-level puzzle." The world suddenly became dead silent. All eyes were fixed on Shun Lian. Shun Lian smiled and cupped his hands. "King of the North, Shun Lian greets the members of the Gushin League." The deputy leader and the leader of the 8 slowly came to their senses and cupped their hands in salute with a cautious look. This man claimed to be the king of the North. Whether they recognized him or not was a question. "I'm the deputy leader, Han Baishur. I'm the leader of the Fire Tribe, Lian Yin. After the introductions, the deputy leader, Han Baishur, noticed Suilin of Goguryeo and hurriedly smiled and nodded. His expression became warm. "King of the North and Suilin of Goguryeo, your presence brings light to this humble, lonely mountain. If the 2 of you are not in a hurry, please give us some face and come to Thorn Castle as guests." Shun Lian hurriedly said, "Deputy leader is too polite." Shun has long heard of Thorn Castle's unique style and has admired it for a long time. It is Shun's honor to be a guest at Lonely Mountain. Suilin of Goguryeo also smiled. "It is my honor. This way, please." Han Baishur immediately extended his hand and gestured. Shun Lian and Suilin of Goguryeo walked side by side. Han Baishur introduced as they walked. "The Gushin League is slightly different from the outside world. Here, there's not much separation between humans and demons. Everyone lives in Lonely Mountain and calls Lonely Mountain their home. They advocate harmony as neighbors and rarely fight or kill." There was a deeper meaning in his words. The leader of the 8 tribes couldn't help but want to roll his eyes. Who outside didn't know that Lonely Mountain was filled with all kinds of people, lawless and chaotic? How could there be harmony as neighbors? Shun Lian raised the corner of his mouth and suddenly thought of saying, "The people are simple and honest, Gotham City, Arkham City, full of talents." He smiled and said, "Shun has long heard of it. The people are simple and honest, Gushin League, full of talents, Thorn Castle." "Haha, the people are simple and honest. Suelen of Goguryeo couldn't help but laugh loudly at these words. Han Baisher was also speechless. To think that Shun Lian was such a king of the north, he had a sense of humor. The leader of the 8 tribes also couldn't help but smile. He had just finished speaking when 2 figures suddenly appeared on the road, one in front and one behind. The one running in front was a half-transformed dog demon with a human head and a dog body. Behind it was a human goo master holding a large saber as he got close to the dog demon and attacked with saber light. The dog demon dodged in panic, barking in fear. Seeing that the human goo master was about to catch up to the dog demon, a tall and sturdy black figure suddenly pounced out from the side. Saber light flashed in the air and blood splattered as the black figure slashed at the human goo master. The dog demon ran back and laughed nonstop in front of the black figure. The black figure lifted the black cloak and revealed a young woman's face. She glanced at Shun Lian's side and then took away the human goo master's belongings as if there was no one around. Finally, she kicked the corpse into the thorny undergrowth at the side. After the thorny undergrowth touched the blood, the thorny vines trembled and wrapped around the human goo master's corpse. In a moment, the whole body was dragged into the depths of the undergrowth and disappeared. That woman and the dog demon didn't even take a look and left. Is this a case of double-crossing? Seeing this, Li Youxiang looked at Han Baisher and was speechless. This is what you meant by living in harmony and having little fighting and killing. Han Baisher was embarrassed and distressed, saying, "These people are all from Valley of Ruins. That is a place where outsiders live. It is a lawless area and not our Gushan League's people." Shun Lian's gaze flashed and he mocked. To think that there is such a chaotic place in the peaceful and harmonious Lone Mountain. Chapter 299. When he said this, Han Baisher felt ashamed, and his face flushed. Hearing this, Feng Ruoshi couldn't help but interject, "There is indeed such a thing. Many people who have committed serious crimes outside would often hide in the Valley of Ruins when they have nowhere to hide. Over time, the Valley of Ruins gradually became a paradise for sins, a place of lawlessness." Shun Lian understood. He felt that Han Baisher was very interesting. Even though the Valley of Ruins was wantonly causing chaos, there were no rumors that the Valley of Ruins was out of control or that the Gushan League had lost power. This was clearly the strategy of the Gushan League. The existence of the Valley of Ruins naturally had its undeniable role and significance. Han Baisher deliberately showed weakness and cowardice, probably because he didn't want to be involved in the battle between him and Family Huang. He was able to accept personal honor and disgrace. No wonder he was the deputy leader recommended by the Duke of Eight. Shun Lian smiled and said meaningfully, "After all, Lonely Mountain is the territory of the Gushan League. The Valley of Ruins is a rotten sore that needs to be treated." Han Baisher's mind moved, but his expression didn't change. He laughed and talked about Lonely Mountain's people and landscape as they headed straight for Thorn Castle. On the way, Shun Lian actually witnessed 3 more fights. 2 of them resulted in bloody cases. Such a lawless scene really refreshed his understanding of how chaotic Lonely Mountain was. Han Baisher and the others, however, did not find it strange and were used to it. They arrived at Thorn Castle. Shun Lian looked up and was deeply attracted and shocked by the huge thorny building in front of him. He couldn't help but think of the sleeping beauty in the fairy tale. The princess has always been sleeping in the castle. The surrounding vines and thorns cover the castle and weave a curtain for the princess to sleep in. Shun Lian sighed sincerely. Thorns and beauty. Just like Lonely Mountain, it's fascinating but can't be touched. Han Baisher raised his eyebrows and his eyes lit up. He smiled and said, "Well said. The King of the North is indeed a man of temperament." Everyone came to the side hall next to the main hall. Thorny thorn flags were hung all around the room. It was both a decoration and a dignified atmosphere. Han Baisher chatted for a while, and the topic soon turned to the primordial cardinal treasure. He smiled and said, "Congratulations, King of the North, for obtaining a primordial cardinal treasure. I wonder if it's convenient for you to take it out and show it to everyone." Suelen of Goguryeo immediately chimed in. That's right. It's rare to see a primordial treasure. King of the North, be generous and show it to us. Shun Lian remained calm and collected. He took a sip of tea and said slowly, I heard from Suelen of Goguryeo that the Gushin League also has a natural supreme treasure. Han Baisher couldn't help but glance at Suelen of Goguryeo. He laughed and said, Suelen of Goguryeo is well informed. To tell you the truth, the first League Master, riddle-guessing old man, once solved a heaven-level puzzle and obtained a thorny death spear. It has been passed down as the League's treasure. Shun Lian's eyes lit up. What a thorny death spear! Can you show it to Shun for him to appraise? Everyone came to their senses after hearing this. If they wanted to see Shun Lian's primordial cardinal treasure, they had to let Shun Lian see the thorny death spear first. Shun Lian played Tai Chi and instantly took the initiative. Suelen of Goguryeo chimed in. That's great. Two primordial cardinal treasures appearing at the same time. This is a grand occasion. If word gets out, it will definitely become a legend. Han Baisher hesitated slightly. He thought for a while and exchanged glances with the 8 division leaders. He then said, Someone, invite the League Master here. A moment later, old Jingxin and old Popper suddenly barged in. Old Jingxin was holding a peacock feather in her hand. She had an impatient expression on her face as she shouted, Why did you call me here? Hurry up and say it. This League Master is very busy. I haven't even plucked all the feathers off that stinky peacock. Shun Lian raised his eyebrows and looked old Jingxin up and down. He was incomparably astonished. This lowly-faced woman was the League Master, but why was she behaving like a child? Han Baisher hurriedly stood up and said, League Master, this is the King of the North, Shun Lian. You've seen this before. She is the Suelen of Goguryeo of the Wei River. Suelen of Goguryeo smiled and nodded her head as a greeting. Old Jingxin suddenly paused. Her eyes curved into crescents as she looked at Shun Lian seriously. Her expression instantly became wonderful. She laughed strangely and said, You're that Shun Lian. There are many people in the Valley of Ruins who want to kill you. This sentence made the world quiet down. Han Baisher and the others' expressions were as awkward as they could be. Shun Lian chuckled. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, Shun greets the League Master. Thank you for your kindness. Old Jingxin tilted her head and looked at Suelen of Goguryeo. No one knew what she thought of, but she covered her mouth and laughed. She said, We meet again, fence-sitter. Old League Master is still brilliant. Suelen of Goguryeo replied casually. Suddenly, she came to her senses and was stunned. Her face darkened. Everyone was speechless. Han Baisher's mouth twitched a few times. He pulled old Jingxin over and said with a smile, The League Master is childlike. Suelen of Goguryeo, please don't blame her. Suelen of Goguryeo snorted and did not say anything. Han Baisher pulled old Jingxin aside and whispered for a while. Old Jingxin suddenly said impatiently, I know. You just want to see the thorny death spear. This League Master knows. Then, Han Baisher walked back and said with a smile, The League Master thinks that the innate treasure is too sharp. It's not suitable for too many people to see it. She wants to invite the King of the North to the inner hall to discuss it in detail. Suelen of Goguryeo stared at him. What did this mean? She was not allowed to see it. Shun Lian said with a smile, Okay. Then, Han Baisher, old Jingxin, and Shun Lian left the crowd and left the side hall. Suelen of Goguryeo watched them leave anxiously. They came to the inner hall. Old Jingxin suddenly opened her mouth and acted like she was vomiting. Shun Lian's eyes narrowed. He could not help but show an expression of disbelief. A fist-sized spear tip emerged from old Jingxin's mouth. Then, a 3-meter-long spear body came out little by little. What was creepy was that the spear's surface was covered with sharp thorns and thorns. It was as red as blood. It was hard to imagine that such a huge spear with thorns was hidden in her body. Han Baisher held his breath and said seriously, This is the thorny death spear. Shun Lian sensed something in an instant. His heart trembled. His eyes moved back and forth between the huge spear and old Jingxin. Seeing this, Han Baisher smiled and said, It seems that the king of the north has sensed that the thorny death spear belongs to the league leader. In fact, the person who solved the heaven-level puzzle was not the riddle-guessing old man, but the league leader. This is a big secret of the Gushan League. I hope that the king of the north will keep a secret. Shun Lian took a deep look at old Jingxin and thought to himself, as expected, this silly lowly face also solved the heaven-level puzzle. You can't judge a book by its cover. However, who didn't have secrets? Shun Lian smiled and said, don't worry. At the same time, I hope that the Gushan Li will keep this secret for Shun. As he said this, he slapped his forehead. Suddenly, there was a waxy uranium? What's the use of a clamp? This is my innate treasure, the Emperor's treasury. Han Baisher looked at it curiously, but couldn't find any clues. Old Jingxin's eyes flashed. He poked and pinched it with his finger. With a look of pure amusement, he laughed and said, this little light ball is fun. Han Baisher was puzzled and said, what's the use of the Emperor's treasury? He couldn't help it. Shun Lian's innate treasure came from the gate of Lonely Mountain. The Gushan League naturally had to have first-hand information. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. Shun Lian pondered for a moment. What's the matter? The Emperor's tortoise Yunyo? The Emperor's Fini Zheng? The skeleton soars into the nest, the wolf hangs waving Meng Jun without waiting for Han Baisher to say anything. Old Jingxin directly threw the thorny death spear over. After Shun Lian caught it, his mind moved. The thorny death spear instantly disappeared from his hands. Seeing this, Han Baisher's hair stood on end. He anxiously shouted, what are you doing? Please wait for a moment. Shun Lian waved his hand and said as he closed his eyes. Han Baisher could only shut his mouth and watch nervously. Shun Lian's mind was immersed in the Emperor's treasury. At this moment, the Emperor's treasury was no longer empty. There was a thorny death spear. Riddle Gesgu said the Emperor's treasury has the ability to perfectly replicate a projection. Let me try using the thorny death spear. Shun Lian concentrated all his attention on the thorny death spear. At this time, the interface flashed and new information appeared. Thorny death spear, innate treasure, power, thorny heaven and thorny earth. Maximum usage, 3 times. The Emperor's treasury can perfectly replicate the thorny death spear. Replica can only be used once. Do you want to replicate it? Replicate. Shun Lian was faintly excited. The next moment, the Emperor's treasury burst out with dazzling light. Shun Lian only felt the primeval essence in his body rushing towards the Emperor's treasury. He quickly calmed his mind and connected the king's jade to the Emperor's treasury, continuously transferring endless primeval essence. The thorny death spear was enveloped by the light and then split into 2. Another thorny death spear appeared beside it. The 2 were exactly the same. I really replicated it. Shun Lian was overjoyed, but when he looked at the king's jade, he found that the price was not small. The king's jade was missing a corner because of this. It was clearly a huge expenditure, far exceeding the growth rate of the king's jade. That is to say, even with a growing resource like the king's jade, it was impossible to replicate it without limit. Shun Lian pondered for a while and duplicated 2 more bramble death spears. He thought to himself, with 3 bramble death spears in my hands, I might not even need to use the Stone of Faith to settle the Huang family. With this thought, Shun Lian opened his eyes, and 2 thorny death spears appeared in his hands out of thin air. This, Han Baisher's face changed color. Ah! Old Jingxin exclaimed. Shun Lian smiled and asked, League Master, can you tell which thorny death spear is yours? Old Jingxin sensed with his mind and said, the one on the left is mine. Shun Lian smiled and returned it, saying, this is the ability of the Emperor's treasury. It can perfectly replicate treasures. Perfect replication. Han Baisher was dumbfounded and almost bit off his tongue. What kind of ability was this? It was too terrifying. Old Jingxin laughed heartlessly. Okay, you have one, I have one. Han Baisher's mouth twitched, thinking, the Gushan League's primeval treasure has been replicated, and you can still laugh. Han Baisher sucked in a breath of cold air and said, can you replicate it without limit? Shun Lian shook his head and said, there are 2 conditions for replication. One is to have a real treasure in hand, and the other is to have enough true yuan. The replication ability of the Emperor's treasury can only be used by me, who has the King's Jade. In addition, the replicas can only be used once and will be scrapped. Chapter 300. At that moment, Han Baisher's heart was filled with regret. He regretted that he had to figure out what Shun Lian's innate supreme treasure was. He regretted not stopping old Jingxin from throwing the thorny death spear to Shun Lian in time. Shun Lian's innate cardinal treasure was fully unleashed, perfectly replicating the thorny death spear. It was unknown how many times he had replicated the thorny death spear. The Gushan Li could be said to have lost all of its trump cards and lost all of its advantages. It was easy to imagine how terrible the consequences would be. They would only be at the mercy of others. If Shun Lian asked the Gushan League to take a stand now, would the Gushan League still have a chance to waver? No. Was there still any room for negotiation? No. Was there any possibility of bargaining or raising the price on the ground? No. Strength was the way of the king. In front of the Shun Lian, the Gushan League was like a tiger that had lost its fangs and claws. It was worse than a sick cat. Han Baisher's heart hung high in his throat. At this moment, Shun Lian's mind was full of thoughts. He was thinking about something else. Other than being able to perfectly replicate the projection, the Emperor's treasury can also enhance the creation and growth. How should I use this ability? Blessings of creation growth. Just from the name, I know that this is an ability that requires time to show its effects. I wonder if this ability can be used on replicas? Thinking up to this point, Shun Lian's thoughts moved. He placed the Faith Stone, Sky Eroding Sword, Flame Blade, Dragon Claw, and Snow Spirit Sword into the Emperor's treasury. He then communicated with Snow Spirit Sword and instructed the Immortal Sword Spirit to carefully observe the changes in these weapons. Then, Shun Lian raised his head. At this moment, Han Baisher was already drenched in cold sweat. He was extremely nervous, and his face was filled with a stiff, dry smile. Shun Lian smiled and said, "Deputy Chief, Shun wants to make a deal with you." Sure enough, it came. Han Baisher smiled bitterly as if he had accepted his fate. He cupped his hands and said, "I'm all ears." Shun Lian said, "The Bramble Death Spear has a limit to how many times it can be used. Sooner or later, it will be used up. However, I have the Emperor's treasury, so I can perfectly replicate the Bramble Death Spear. Although the replica can only be used once, the power it can unleash should be the same as the real thing." Han Baisher was stunned for a moment before he came to his senses. His spirits were lifted as he said, "That is to say, as long as you have this thorny death spear, King of the North, you can continue to duplicate natural supreme treasures, right?" Shun Lian was full of sincerity. He smiled and said, "In that case, the Gushan Li will never lose the thorny death spear." Han Baisher was overjoyed. Good fortune fell from the sky. This was undoubtedly a huge temptation. It must be known that the Gushan Li was able to subdue all the bandits and become the leader of Lonely Mountain. The biggest reason they relied on was the powerful deterrence of the thorny death spear. Because of this, just imagine, if the Gushan League received Shun Lian's support, the thorny death spear would never run out. The future days of the Gushan League would be much better. Han Baisher was going crazy with joy. Unexpectedly, old Jingxin became excited when he heard this. He said, "Does this mean that I can play with the thorny death spear at any time in the future? That's great. I can finally find Chu Qitian and take revenge. I can stab his, but until it blossoms." Ha ha ha. Han Baisher's smile froze. He cursed in his heart and said seriously, "You can't. Did you forget the consequences of using the thorny death spear last time?" Old Jingxin's mouth twitched. He rolled his eyes and said, I remember. I'm a thorny demon. The thorny death spear is the most powerful in my hands. Last time, I was playful and played with the spear. I stabbed my master's butt, which led to a fatal disaster." Shun Lian's expression changed when he heard this. No way, the riddle-guessing old man was killed by mistake. What kind of a grieved death was this? Han Baisher smiled bitterly. He looked like he wanted to cry, but had no tears. He said, "King of the North, I'm sorry. It's a family scandal. please keep a secret. In fact, the riddle-guessing old man loved you very much. He couldn't forget you before he left. He asked the younger generation to take care of you. Old Jingxin laughed and said, my master told a lie. He said that I was the hope of revitalizing the Gushan League. They actually believed it. Haha, bunch of fools. Shun Lian narrowed his eyes slightly and said with a deep smile, the riddle-guessing old man is broad-minded. The vice leader is open-minded. The alliance leader is innocent. The revitalization of the Gushan League is in sight. Old Jingxin scratched his head. He seemed to understand. Han Baisher gradually calmed down and said seriously, the King of the North is a master of the universe. You can easily duplicate innate treasures. The Gushan League will not accept such great benefits. Shun Lian said directly, Shan, after passing Lonely Mountain, you will enter the hinterland of Family Huang. The war with Family Huang is imminent. However, Family Huang has many vassal forces that need to be eliminated. Shen hopes that the Gushan League can help me restrain these miscellaneous forces. Han Baisher held his breath, and his expression changed. He said in a deep voice, Family Huang has many vassal forces. Just the aristocratic families alone number more than 30. There are also sects, lone gu masters, and so on. These forces added together are incomparably huge. The small lonely mountain cannot fight against so many. How can it restrain them? Shun Lian's lips curled up and asked, has the vice leader fought in a group battle before? Han Baisher was stunned. Old Jingxin excitedly raised his hand and shouted, this Meng Zhu has fought before. I can fight against more than 10 people. Shun Lian gave a thumbs up and smiled. There is a sure win move in a group battle. You don't need to defeat everyone. You just need to defeat the strongest one. Let me ask you, who is the most arrogant among Family Huang's vassal forces? Han Baisher understood and replied, it should be Family Sunday. Family Sun is Family Huang's marriage alliance. They are bound together for good or ill. Shun Lian directly handed the bramble thorn death spear to Han Baisher, saying, there is no aristocratic family that cannot be dealt with one spear. If there is, then use 2 spears. Innate treasures were nuclear weapons of mass destruction. It was not an exaggeration to say that they could walk unhindered in the world and beat up aristocratic families and sections. Hearing this, Han Baisher's mind shook. He felt a domineering aura assaulting him, causing his heart to surge and his face to twitch. Old Jingxin reacted quickly and snatched the replica. He laughed happily and said, I love fighting the most. I will help you fight, haha. Shun Lian's eyes lit up and said, the Gushan League will launch a surprise attack on Family Sun and directly crush them with their innate treasures. Shen will continue to approach Family Huang, so that Family Huang will not dare to be distracted and help. After the Gushan League defeats Family Sun, they will immediately spread the word that if anyone dares to flirt with Family Huang again, they will end up like Family Sunday. This will be enough to intimidate the other vassal forces. In this way, when a war breaks out between me and the Huang family, there won't be any stray cats or dogs jumping out to interfere. I can wipe out the Huang family in the shortest time possible and unify the northern lands. Han Baisher gasped and sighed in admiration. As expected of the man who defeated Ingmuyu, he indeed had the spirit of an overlord. Chapter 301. This was a very realistic problem for Han Baisher. How much could he gain by working with Family Huang? How much could he gain by working with Shun Lian? The Shun Lian, who owned the Emperor's treasure house, was instantly superior to Family Huang. This was a very easy matter to settle. It was obvious that even if the Gushan League helped Family Huang win the northern lands, Family Huang should be able to share some benefits with the Gushan League, or even put the Gushan League under the direct line of descent. However, in the end, the Gushan League would be completely reduced to Family Huang's dog in the future. It would be better to be free than it was now. On the other hand, the Gushan League and Shun Lian were completely different. The Gushan League and Shun Lian were not only subservient, but also cooperative. The Shun Lian needed the real thorny death spear, and the Gushan League could give back a powerful innate treasure to ensure the longevity of the Gushan League. It was true that the power was in their own hands. This was something that family Huang could not give. Even if the Shun Lian won the northern lands, or even the whole world in the future, and had tens of millions of forces under his command, the Gushan League would still have the opportunity to stand out and even stand out. Even if the Gushan League remained neutral and did not help either side, wouldn't the Shun Lian find someone else to destroy family's son? Wrong. Sualin of Goguryeo was in the side hall. As long as the Shun Lian took out a thorny death spear for him, Sualin of Goguryeo would definitely become a bootlicker. This was the great temptation and deterrence brought about by the innate treasure. Han Baisher's thoughts churned like a tide. The opportunity did not come again. Finally, he no longer hesitated and immediately piled up a smile on his face. He said, "The King of the North has solved the heaven-level puzzle. Even the Gushan League is a member of the Gushan League. The Gushan League has to stand on your side no matter what. Please rest assured that the Gushan League will not let you down. Before you reach family Huang, family son will die." The bewitchment was a success. Shun Lian smiled and said, "There's no time to lose. Shun will leave Lonely Mountain now." Han Baisher muttered to himself. Suddenly, he thought of something and said, "Oh, that's right. Family Huang has issued a bounty. The Valley of Ruins is sharpening their knives to kill you. King of the North, please wait for a moment. I will first make some arrangements and guarantee you a smooth journey through the Valley of Ruins." Shun Lian waved his hand and said seriously, "No. If the Gushan League shows goodwill to me, it will inevitably arouse family Huang's vigilance. They will treat you as an enemy and guard against you. If the Gushan League attacks family son again, the other side will most likely be on guard. It won't be good. Therefore, the Gushan League should sit by and watch the Valley of Ruins. Or they should simply assume a stance of supporting the Valley of Ruins to confuse family Huang and family Sunday. At the same time, Shun can take this opportunity to help you cut off some hostile forces and clean up the Valley of Ruins. It will be an internal detoxification." Hearing this, Han Baisher's heart warmed. He was moved. He was sincerely convinced. He couldn't help but be convinced. This was the boldness of a true overlord. He convinced people with virtue, reason, and magnanimity. Han Baisher realized that he had unknowingly been arranged by Shun Lian. He was also a leader. He secretly compared himself to Shun Lian and couldn't help but feel ashamed. He was deeply enlightened. In short, he was completely convinced. Han Baisher bowed solemnly and said in an extremely sincere tone, "The Gushan League will definitely do its best to help the King of the North defeat family Huang and conquer the world." The three of them returned to the side hall. Han Baisher was in high spirits. Old Jingxin was the same as before. Shun Lian's expression was a little ugly. He was faintly angry. Sualin of Goguryeo, who was full of anxiety, observed their expressions. His gaze constantly lingered on the three of them. "Let's go." After Shun Lian came back, he suddenly waved his hand and strode away. Han Baisher waved behind him and said with a smile, "King of the North, sit for a while and drink some tea." Shun Lian stopped, tilted his head, and shouted, "I hope the Gushan League won't regret today's decision." Han Baisher smiled and said, "I won't regret it." Old Jingxin looked around and was very excited. She also shouted, "I won't regret it." Sualin of Goguryeo quickly followed and asked in a low voice, "What's wrong?" Shun Lian swung his sleeves and said in a deep voice, "The Gushan League doesn't know how to appreciate kindness. Shun will kill them sooner or later." What fierce words! What did the Gushan League do to make this Thunder King so angry? Sualin of Goguryeo raised his eyebrows and narrowed his eyes. Gradually, a cold smile appeared on his lips. The Valley of Ruins was not a ruin at all. On the contrary, every inch of land in the Valley of Ruins was worth an inch of gold. It was a paradise of evil, a place of lawlessness. Only if you had the strength or a powerful backer could you do almost anything you wanted. A place as big as a town had a population of 100,000. The population density was comparable to that of a big city. On the dirty and messy streets, fighting and killing occurred from time to time. Deception and deception could be found everywhere on the streets. As they approached the Valley of Ruins, Feng Ruoshi's expression became more cautious. She said, "The residents of the Valley of Ruins are all vicious and merciless. They form gangs and become sworn brothers with each other. As a result, there are many gangs, mainly led by the 10 bosses. The 10 mysterious bosses have formed an alliance and jointly control the power, divide the territory, control all trades and professions, and plunder the wealth." Shun Lian was curious and asked, "What is the main source of income in the Valley of Ruins? What makes these villains flock to it like ducks?" Feng Ruoshi thought for a while and said, "Living on the mountain and living on the river. Although the Lone Mountain area is full of thorns and the environment is bad and dangerous, it is also a natural treasure house. It contains a lot of resources, but the cost of mining is too high. I'm afraid only those desperados have the courage to go deep into the Lone Mountain. In addition, the Lone Mountain is located on an important road that connects the 9 Ingu stronghold and the big cities in the south. There are many caravans coming and going. It is a treasure land with endless wealth." Shun Lian understood and couldn't help but think of the Dragon Gate Inn. Jin Xiangyu opened a shady inn in the desert. She ate both black and white people. Her buns were filled with human flesh and were very delicious. "Young master, the Valley of Ruins is full of villains with strange methods. They want to kill you, so you have to be careful. I want to go into the Valley of Ruins to investigate the situation." Feng Ruoshi volunteered. She had been in the Valley of Ruins before and knew it well. Shun Lian thought for a while and said, "Okay." He looked at his personal guard. "Sure who? You go and take care of her." "Yes." Sure who received the order. The two ran quickly and entered the Valley of Ruins. Shun Lian looked around. The Valley of Ruins was like a Mexican slum. It was built along the mountain, and the buildings were of different heights. It gave people a feeling of suffocation and oppression. About an hour later, Feng Ruoshi and Shurhu returned with ugly expressions. They reported, "The 10 elders gave the order to take young master's head. Now, everyone in the Valley of Ruins is a soldier. They are filled with murderous intent and are waiting for young master to appear." Shun Lian smiled and sighed. "They are very warm towards me." Feng Ruoshi pursed her lips and said, "I have a few friends in the Valley of Ruins. They have a way to help young master pass through the Valley of Ruins. Of course, their price is not small." Shun Lian chuckled. "Relying on yourself is better than relying on others. Let's go. Even if the Valley of Ruins is a dragon's pool and a tiger's den, if I can't pass this hurdle, how can I attack the family Huang?" Hearing this, Li Youxiang patted her chest and said, "Young master with the wine pool, I can also fight. It's a good opportunity to show off my divine ability." Shun Lian nodded and glanced at Suilin of Goguryeo. He smiled and said, "Suilin of Goguryeo, it seems like you and I will have to work together again." Chapter 302. Although he said this, he didn't want to accompany them at all. Unfortunately, he didn't have a chance to escape. He felt as if he was being roasted on a fire. After a pause, Suilin of Goguryeo couldn't help but add, "Since the Valley of Ruins is sharpening its blade, why don't we keep a low profile and minimize conflict?" Shun Lian readily agreed. "Okay." The group finally arrived at the Valley of Ruins. Looking around, not a single street in the Valley of Ruins was straight. It was like a dense forest of buildings, covered with slender and dirty alleys. One had to take 7 or 8 turns to pass through. Feng Ruoshi took out a map of the Valley of Ruins and drew a thick, zigzagging line. "This is the shortest path through the Valley of Ruins. We have to go through 11 alleys. If we take the wrong path and enter other alleys, it's easy to get lost and lose our sense of direction." After a pause, she continued, "We're the target of a multitude of arrows. The enemies are hiding inside and outside the buildings, so there are too many blind spots. They can attack us from the side at any time or bombard us from all directions. If we get caught in a chaotic battle and accidentally enter other alleys, we have to stay calm. We have to find a place to hide first and then think of a way to escape. Oh, and the 10 elders have raised many dog demons. They are incomparably ferocious and extremely loyal. If they give the order, we might be besieged by thousands of dog demons." What she said When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but feel their scalps go numb and their breathing stagnant. It was indeed a place of no return. It was like purgatory. Swalen of Goguryeo was extremely speechless. He couldn't help but look at his shrimp soldiers and crab generals and secretly sigh. If they fought later, his subordinates would definitely be involved in the chaos. He didn't know how many of them would die. Just thinking about it made him extremely sullen. At this time, Shun Lian walked forward and said with a smile, "Feng Ruoshi, there's one thing you're wrong about." Feng Ruoshi was slightly stunned. She quickly lowered her head and said, "Young master, please enlighten me." The shortest path through the Valley of Ruins. Shun Lian glanced at the thick, zigzagging line on the map and then looked straight ahead. He calmly raised his right arm and clenched it into a fist. The white halo on his fist flickered, becoming stronger and stronger. The endless light contained a great power, surging violently on the fist. Then it broke free and turned into a light beam as thick as a water tank, gushing forward like a flood toward the densely packed buildings. Heaven and earth instantly darkened. Pung! A grand explosion shook the world. The entire lonely mountain seemed to tremble as if there was an earthquake. The incomparably powerful fist force rushed forward in a straight line, destroying everything in its path. All the buildings along the way collapsed, and a trail of several meters wide was plowed out all the way to the end. The huge Valley of Ruins was split into two. Feng Ruoshi and the others' eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. They were dumbfounded, unable to believe what they were seeing. Shocking. All that was left in everyone's body was a vast shock that was battering their souls. The shortest path through the Valley of Ruins should be this one. At this moment, Shun Lian's indifferent voice slowly entered everyone's ears. Seeing this, Swalen of Goguryeo was completely speechless, and her whole body began to twitch. What happened to keeping a low profile? "Let's go!" Shun Lian shouted and strode forward in a straight line, saying in a clear voice, "King of the North, Shun Lian, is here. Do you dare to fight?" At this moment, the Valley of Ruins was in chaos. Destroyed houses and streets were overturned on both sides, crushing and burying countless people and monsters. The other people and monsters were frightened, not knowing what was going on. It was not until Shun Lian's shout spread throughout the Valley of Ruins that they realized what was going on. The one who strikes first gains the advantage. This Shun Lian is indeed a formidable person. He actually broke into the Valley of Ruins in this way. Too ruthless. Shun Lian is even more vicious than us desperados. Shun Lian is too arrogant. When has the Valley of Ruins ever been provoked like this? Brothers, Family Huang has issued a reward, and the 10 elders have also given the order. Don't be afraid. Let's go together and defeat the Shun Lian. Kill him. Amidst a series of sharp whistles, hundreds of figures flashed over with a swish, and they landed on a perfectly straight path, causing their figures to be indistinct. These figures were mostly humans. There were men and women, old and young, but their faces were filled with evil and malevolence. They stared at the Shun Lian and the others, their expressions filled with tyranny. As time passed, more and more figures gathered. Their auras were released and connected together, forming a huge wave of pressure that surged over. That pressure was too evil. The wind and clouds in the sky seemed to be polluted and affected, turning dark and heavy like lead. It descended and pressed down on everyone's heads, making it hard for them to breathe. Which one is the Shun Lian? Get out here! A tall and sturdy fat man walked out of the crowd and shouted with a ruthless expression. Seeing this person, Feng Ruoshi's pupil shrunk, and she said in shock, "Young master, this person is Yu Deheo. He is a gold-ranked rank 9 Gu master and can reflect any external attack. Moreover, the reflected attack is even stronger and is very hard to deal with. His battle strength is even higher than gold-ranked rank 10 Gu masters. He is also one of the 10 elders' subordinates." With that said, Feng Ruoshi raised her foot and kicked out a pebble. The pebble struck Yu Deheo's stomach and sank deep into it. Following that, There was a popping sound as Udaheo's stomach suddenly swelled up. The pebble bounced back, and with a whoosh, it charged at Fong Ruashi with greater force. Bang! Shirhu's right arm suddenly expanded. The strength of the tong by Gu burst out and shattered the stone with a punch. Shun Lian's gaze flashed, and he said playfully, "Interesting." The rebound Gu was not simple. It borrowed the force of the opponent's attack and was the nemesis of strength-type Gu masters. No wonder Udaheo could not wait to jump out. He was not frightened by Shan Lian's punch at all. Instead, he felt that this was a good opportunity for him to show off his skills. Seeing this, Li Youxiang's expression turned serious, and she said seriously, "Young master, I will go and meet them." Shun Lian lightly nodded. Li Youxiang took a deep breath, and her eyes flashed with excitement. This was her first battle. Changing from a non-battle type Gu master to a battle type Gu master was undoubtedly a huge change. Humans were like this. People who never fought would scoff at violence, but once they obtained great strength, they would become addicted to battle. Li Youxiang flipped her hand and took out the innate treasure wine pool. She took a sip of the wine and rinsed her mouth. Her face was flushed red. Puff! The next moment, Li Youxiang used all her strength and spat out all the wine in her mouth. Once the wine left her mouth, it immediately turned into a large amount of dense white fog, rolling like clouds and rapidly spreading. The white fog covered a large area, and Uktaheo and the rest had nowhere to hide. They also had no time to dodge and were all enveloped by it. "What is this fog? Is it poisonous?" Someone nervously asked. "Everyone, hold your breath. This does not seem to be poisonous fog. It is the smell of alcohol." Chapter 303. The alcohol energy really entered our bodies. Soon, Udaheo and the rest turned pale with fright as traces of alcohol energy entered their bodies. They used their unique techniques to block it, but none of them were able to block the alcohol energy. The next moment, Udaheo and the rest's footsteps were light. Their vision was blurry, their bodies were swaying, and their faces were flushed red. It was as if they were drunk, in a drunken stupor. All of them were practicing drunken fist on the spot. Wiped out. No, the group was crippled. All of them had lost their battle strength and were at the mercy of others. This is my divine ability. Get drunk." Li Youxiang licked the sparkling alcohol on her lips and said domineeringly, "Amazing." Seeing this, Fong Ruashi, Shirhu, and the rest cheered excitedly. Shun Lian's gaze also brightened as he nodded. Swalan of Goguryeo was speechless. A trace of shock appeared in his heart as he started to think about the profoundness of the drunken stupor divine ability and how to break it. At this moment, Li Youxiang turned around and chuckled. "Big brother Shirhu, big brother Ningquan, you two go beat them up. Don't worry, they've been hit by my drunken god art. They won't resist at all." Shirhu's gaze swept over, and he said excitedly, "Good job, Sister Youxiang. I will beat them up for you." As he spoke, his arms suddenly expanded, and the power of the Tongbi Gu was fully unleashed. He rushed out and closed in on Udaheo and the rest. His huge Tongbi fists flew and punched, and the sound of banging could be heard continuously. "Here I come." Ning Quan was not willing to fall behind, immediately summoning the light sword Gu. The sword light shone brightly as it slashed left, right, slashed, swept, stabbed, and killed without any restraint. Sure enough, Udaheo and the others did not resist at all. Even though they were knocked to the ground one by one, or had their arms and legs broken, and their blood splattered all over the ground, they were still drunk and did not feel any pain at all. There were even silly smiles on their faces, and they did not realize that they were being abused at all. Shirhu and Ning Quan continued to abuse them. A moment later, hundreds of people were lying on the ground in a mess. This was a complete wipeout, a crushing defeat. The fog formed by the strong smell of alcohol came and went quickly. Soon, it disappeared completely. Sunlight shone down, illuminating an incomparably tragic scene. My hand is broken, my foot, wow. Someone was vomiting blood. Udaheo and the others suddenly came to their senses. They suddenly realized that they were seriously injured and couldn't get up. There were even people around them who were screaming for their lives. Screams and cries filled the air. In a split second, hysterical panic, wrapped in a sharp pain, quickly spread. Shun Lian stopped breathing and smiled. He said sincerely, "Li Youxiang, after this battle, your name will be known throughout the world." Hearing this, Li Youxiang couldn't help but reveal a look of great pride on her face. Swish, swish, swish. At this time, many more figures jumped out. What caused everyone to be speechless was that these figures completely disregarded Shun Lian and the others. All of them only cared about plundering the belongings of Yudaheo and the others, and even fought and killed each other. Woof, woof, woof. Then, dog demons rushed out one after another. Some of them had a human body and a dog's head and walked upright, while others had a human body and a dog's head and 4 feet on the ground. They swarmed toward Shun Lian and the others. Shun Lian smiled faintly and glanced at Suilin of Goguryeo. He said, "Suilin of Goguryeo, aren't you going to show me what you've got? You want me to kill dogs?" Suilin of Goguryeo cursed Shun Lian's ancestors in his heart, but he couldn't refuse. He quickly laughed and said, "They're just dog demons. Little ones, kill them. Kill them." At his command, the prawn soldiers and crab generals rushed out noisily and soon collided with the dog demons. Both sides immediately bared their fangs and engaged in a fierce battle. For a moment, flesh and blood splattered everywhere. These dog demons were incomparably ferocious. They were all trained by the 10 elders and had experienced all kinds of unimaginable cruel battles since birth. They were killing machines that were 1 in 100. Suilin of Goguryeo had been living peacefully in the Black River estuary for a long time without any external threats. His prawn soldiers and crab generals had not been on the battlefield for a long time. Moreover, water demons were not good at fighting on land. Once they met these terrifying dog demons, they immediately revealed their true forms and were defeated one-sidedly, suffering heavy casualties. Seeing this, Suilin of Goguryeo's anger surged. His expression gradually turned gloomy, and after coldly glancing at Shun Lian, he finally couldn't hold back and made his move. Suilin of Goguryeo's aura suddenly changed. A pitch-black liquid gushed out of his palm and turned into a lump of black water. As his arm shook slightly, the black water dispersed and turned into small water droplets. Heavenly One Divine Water, kill. It turned out that these black water droplets were formed from the Heavenly One Divine Water refined by Suilin of Goguryeo using the heavy water goo. Suilin of Goguryeo's gaze flashed, and all the black water droplets shot out like arrows leaving the bow. Pew, pew, pew. The black water droplets rapidly elongated on the way forward, turning into thin needles and shooting into the dog demons' bodies. Almost at the next moment, a series of explosions sounded, and those dog demons all exploded into pieces. Their flesh and blood were badly mangled, and the scene was extremely brutal. Shun Lian clapped 3 times and praised, "Amazing, amazing." As expected of the king of Wei River, the Heavenly One Divine Water's reputation is well-deserved. Suilin of Goguryeo had a complex expression as he chuckled and said, "Insignificant skill, how can it compare to the might of the king of the North's fist?" At this time, the villains in the Valley of Ruins seemed to have experienced the power of Shun Lian and the others, and temporarily ceased their attacks. "Kneel down." Shurhu walked over with Yudaheo and pressed the big fatty to kneel on the ground. Shun Lian asked, "Where are the 10 elders hiding?" Yudaheo sneered, "If you want to kill me, then feel free to do so. After 18 years, I will still be a hero." Shun Lian spread out his hands, and with a whoosh, a white flame suddenly appeared in the center of his palm. He said coldly, "Do you know what this is?" Yudaheo's pupils shrank, and a trace of deep fear flashed through his eyes. He gritted his teeth and said, "The flame of the undead." Shun Lian laughed. "Correct. It is the flame of the undead. This flame can refine you into an undead, and you will be under my control. Then, I can still get the answer I want." Yudaheo couldn't help but shiver. After a moment of hesitation, he replied, "The 10 elders are mysterious. I only know who one of them is. He is hiding in a tailor shop." It was worth mentioning here that the so-called 10 elders were actually similar to the leaders of the top 10 gangs. They hid behind the scenes and never revealed themselves. They were true recluses. After all, the struggle between gangs was very cruel, and being the leader was very risky. There were all kinds of assassinations, and the death rate was quite high. The true leaders of the gangs were never ostentatious and hid in the city. In the eyes of their neighbors, they might be ordinary people. Shun Lian's lips curled. "Take me there." Yu Deheo was dejected. He was escorted by Shur, who through a few alleys, and they arrived at an inconspicuous tailor shop. There was only one person in the small tailor shop. The old man's beard was white, and his face was full of wrinkles. He was trembling, and at first glance, he looked lifeless like a rotten tree. This old tailor was cutting cloth to make clothes. When Yu Deheo saw the old man, he knelt down dejectedly. The old man tilted his head and looked at him. His expression was as usual, and his calm bearing alone made people feel reverence. Shun Lian narrowed his eyes and cupped his hands. "Greetings." The old man grinned and cupped his hands. "This old man is Zhang Yuanqi. Greetings, king of the northern region." Shun Lian's face showed a playful expression. "Senior is a legendary Gu master, but you hid in Valley of Ruins and became a gang leader. This junior cannot understand." "What? This old man is legendary?" Fang Ruo Shi and the rest were stunned. Suilin of Goguryeo was also stunned, unable to believe it. Zhang Yuan, she smiled lightly. "This old man is unbearable and has made a fool of himself in front of King of the North. This world cannot accommodate legendary Gu masters, and we are all cowards. Plus, we have too many enemies, and we are already tired of the struggle in the martial world. We only want to find a place to stay." Shun Lian snorted. "That is to say, the 10 elders spread the rumor of wanting to kill me, but it was just for fun?" Zhang Yuan, she shook his head. "The one who wants to kill you is not us, but Family Huang. Family Huang's think tank, Bailey Xingshu, is extremely intelligent. He actually found out our identities and used it to threaten us. The 10 elders had no choice but to make a move against King of the North." Shun Lian understood and said solemnly, "Then how do we settle this debt?" Zhang Yuan, she asked back, "How does King of the North want to settle it?" Shun Lian pondered for a moment and said, "Do the 10 elders have any powerful demon weapons or innate treasures?" Zhang Yuan, she was slightly surprised. He thought for a moment and took out an ancient square seal. It looked like it was carved out of jade, and its light was restrained. There was a faint divine light moving around it. "This treasure is called Heaven Opening Seal. It is an innate treasure that this old man brought from the Central Plains. It has unfathomable power. If King of the North likes it, feel free to take it." Chapter 304. Legend, Heaven Storing Seal. Suilin of Goguryeo looked at Zhang Yuanqi deeply before turning around and leaving. If Zhang Yuanqi is a legend, then the other 9 elders are all legends. Who would have thought that the valley filled with villains would have so many experts hidden within? Hidden from the world, listening to the wind. Suilin of Goguryeo's heart was greatly shaken as he looked at Shun Lian with endless melancholy. The tailor shop owner sent them off, his gaze somewhat drifting. After a while, he sighed. "Master, this servant deserves death." Yu Deheo pounced over and kowtowed heavily on the ground, causing a pool of blood to appear. Zhang Yuanqi waved his hand, lightly saying, "This is not your fault. If you did not speak, Shun Lian would have refined you into an undead spirit, and the result would have been the same. In the Battle of Gu Dao, the winner is king, and the winner can win everything. Get up." Yu Deheo slowly got up, standing at the side with his hands clasped behind his back, hatefully saying, "Shun Lian is so arrogant and despotic. He knew Master is a legend, yet he still took Master's heaven-storing seal. This is simply outrageous." Zhang Yuanqi was indifferent, his voice emotionless. Although heaven-storing seal is an innate treasure, it is not a battle-type treasure, and it can only be used once before being destroyed. I purposely did not tell Shun Lian the use of heaven-storing seal, so that he could try it himself. After trying it, there's no more after. Yu Deheo's body shook, quickly saying, "Master is wise." Zhang Yuanxi waved his hand, sighing. "Let's go. This place is already exposed. I can no longer be a tailor." Sigh. Actually, I quite like being a tailor. Yu Deheo was speechless, not knowing how to reply. He could only flatter. "Master, you are becoming more and more cultured." Zhang Yuanxi chuckled, turning around and picking up a pair of scissors, opening it and clipping a piece of cloth, slowly saying, "An eagle soars into the sky. A fish soars into the shallow depths. Gu are like humans. Raising Gu is raising humans, and raising humans is mainly raising their nature. Gu have spirits, humans have natures, and the combination of spirits is self-restraint. Some temper themselves on the path of hegemony. Some cut heaven and earth in the tailor shop." As the scissors closed, the cloth was torn apart. The white-haired old man cut out a piece of heaven and earth and draped it over his body. Shun Lian is so tyrannical and invincible, yet the Gushin League dares to defy him. How interesting. Alas, it seems that the Gushin League has already submitted to the Shun Lian. We were all kept in the dark. Back then, I was chased by my enemies and had nowhere to run. Riddle-guessing old man took me in and hid me in the Valley of Ruins, passing my days peacefully. I owe riddle-guessing old man a great favor. Riddle-guessing old man only hoped that one day in the future, when the Gushin League was in trouble, I would be able to help. Unfortunately, it was getting harder and harder to be a mafia boss in recent years. The guys under him were disobedient and often crossed the line, which made the Gushin League unhappy. There are more and more conflicts between the Gushin League and the Valley of Ruins. This time, the Gushin League suddenly made a ruthless move. They borrowed the hands of the Shunlian to knock down the Valley of Ruins. Their methods were very clever. Alas, riddle-guessing old man has a successor. Sighing, Zhang Yuanxi walked out of the tailor shop and stepped into a small alley, quickly disappearing. The Shunlian's group swaggered out of Lonely Mountain. A few days later, the Gushin League mobilized their troops in the middle of the night. Strange rocks were piled up like sitting tigers, and pine trees hung diagonally like flying dragons. Bamboo trees swayed sparsely, and pine trees were dense and green. A few thatched cottages were half filled with silver, and a small bridge was built diagonally with powder. These thatched cottages were hidden deep in the mountains and old forests. This mountain was called the Motionless Mountain. It was far away from where humans lived, and it was hard to find traces of demons. It was isolated from the world. Ancient trees towered into the sky in the mountains, and the sea serpent energy lingered around. It was exquisite and beautiful, but it was also cold and threatening. Snow fluttered and the cold wind blew continuously. White snow covered the vast expanse, and hungry beasts wandered everywhere. The owners of these secluded thatched cottages were Xiezhen and Ingji. Half a year ago, a man and a fox left the Wushang Inn. At that time, Xiezhen had just recovered from a serious illness, and Shunlian was still missing. Ingji thought that they couldn't hide in the Wushang Inn forever, so he took Xiezhen away from the world and came to the Motionless Mountain to live in seclusion. The place was bitter and cold, but the most important thing was safety. He hoped that he could avoid the pursuit of the Fuyuan Temple forever. They lived there for half a year. Under the care of Ingji, Xiezhen completely recovered. His whole person gradually walked out of the haze under the nourishment of beauty and love, and became the carefree and cheerful young master Xiezhen again. At this time, Xiezhen still didn't know that Ingji was the fox demon. Ingji also didn't tell him about his origin. He just wanted to get rid of everything and be with him. After Xiezhen went through the torture and destruction of the Dry Mountain Temple, his body and mind were greatly damaged. Only time could slowly heal those wounds, so that he wouldn't wake up from the nightmare. Xiezhen enjoyed the tranquility of the mountain, and even more enjoyed the company of beauty. He was a person who was easily satisfied and knew how to cherish things. The only worry in his heart was whether Xun Lian had survived the crisis. The result made him overjoyed. Xun Lian defeated Ing Muyu. Now, Xiezhen was completely relieved. He no longer had any worries, and he was very satisfied with his life. With Ing Zhi's company, what more could a man ask for? Woo-woo, the cold wind in the mountain whistled. Xiezhen wrapped himself in a thick fur coat, exhaled a white breath, and continued to chop firewood with his axe. He chopped a pile of firewood, put it in the corner of the cottage, and threw a few pieces of firewood into the stove. The flames burned brightly, warming the thatched cottage until it was as warm as spring. Xiezhen quietly put the 2 items into the furnace. Then, she sat beside the furnace and stared at it in a daze. Ingji was sitting by the stove, embroidering. How could he not notice Xiezhen's gaze? He didn't raise his head, but the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up into a happy and sweet smile. He said angrily, "Do I look good?" Xiezhen smiled foolishly and said, "Yes." Ingji couldn't help but smile even wider. He chatted back and forth, occasionally laughing heartily. A moment later, Xiezhen hurriedly used a pair of tongs to pry open the ashes of the stove and pulled out 2 black things. Immediately, a strong fragrance wafted out. Ingji asked curiously, "What is this? It smells so good." Xiezhen smiled proudly and said, "Roasted sweet potatoes. I especially liked to eat them when I was young. Today, I happened to find wild sweet potatoes near the hot springs and mountains. Come have a taste. Be careful, it's hot." Xiezhen picked up a sweet potato and peeled it, revealing the fragrant flesh inside. Ingji's appetite was immediately aroused. He tasted it. It was indeed delicious. It was sweet and fragrant, and also very refreshing. "Is it good?" Xiezhen asked expectantly. He always felt that he was useless, and that doing something for Ing Zhi gave him a great sense of accomplishment. "It's good." Ing Zhi liked to eat it very much and ate heartily. Xiezhen's entire body was filled with happiness. The bitter cold and empty, motionless mountain didn't have the hustle and bustle of the mortal world, but it was filled with a deep love that was rarely seen in the mortal world. He only hoped that these precious days could continue forever. "If you like it, I'll go there tomorrow," Xiezhen said, but was suddenly interrupted by Ing Zhi. "Careful!" Ing Zhi suddenly stopped. His expression changed as he threw away the sweet potato, pulled Xiezhen, and broke out of the window. Chapter 305. Our home. Ing Zhi and Xiezhen were far away. Witnessing the destruction of the cottage, their hearts were filled with grief. They had built the cottage bit by bit. Not only did they put in their physical strength, but they also put in a lot of effort. Xiezhen treated the cottage as her home, while Ing Zhi treated the cottage as his love nest. The cottage was destroyed. Ing Zhi's face was cold as ice. Anger surged within him. He suddenly raised his head and focused his gaze. 2 figures appeared at the end of his line of sight. One was a laughing monk, and the other was a middle-aged man dressed like a teacher. The laughing monk. Ing Zhi recognized the monk at a glance. The laughing monk walked the world with a smile. His smile was very special. Even if someone had never seen him before, they would be able to recognize him the moment they saw his smiling face. Ing Zhi had not only heard of the laughing monk's name, but had also seen him before. The story of the bet between the laughing monk and the fox demon was widely spread in the Green Hill Holy Land. It was thought-provoking. Many years ago, on a dark and windy night, the laughing monk was sleeping in a deserted temple. Coincidentally, he met a couple walking at night in the temple. The husband was a weak scholar, while the wife looked very virtuous. But the laughing monk could tell at a glance that the wife was actually the fox demon in human form. The scholar, on the other hand, was completely unaware. The laughing monk did not expose the fox demon. He casually chatted with him for a while before closing his eyes to sleep. That night, the scholar fell into a deep sleep. Only then did the laughing monk get up and officially confront the fox demon. The laughing monk smiled and said, "Humans and demons are different. The fox demon should not seduce mortals. It will only harm them." He then advised the fox demon to leave the scholar. The fox demon naturally refused. The laughing monk asked why. The fox demon replied, Lang Jun and I are in true love. We won't be together forever." Thus, the laughing monk smiled and said, "I want to make a bet with you." The laughing monk had an incredible goo. It was the gambling goo. This goo, as the name suggests, can allow two or more parties to guess the outcome of a competition or an unpredictable outcome, and bet on the outcome. Fox Demon knew that he was no match for the laughing monk, so he decided to take a gamble. Perhaps he had a chance of winning. Bet on what? Let's bet on whether the scholar has true love for you. Then you'll definitely lose. The wager is our life and death. However, a monk cannot kill. How about this? If the monk loses, the monk will die. If you lose, you will only lose your powers. It's a deal. You'll regret it. Hearing this, the laughing monk grinned, revealing his 2 rows of teeth. He chuckled and said, "This monk will wait and see." With that, the laughing monk left. The fox demon and the scholar also left the desolate temple the next day. On the way, they suddenly met a beautiful young girl who was screaming for help. Behind her were 3 ferocious bandits who were chasing after her. Seeing this, the scholar couldn't sit by and watch. He risked his life to save her. Fox Demon had no choice but to secretly help and beat the 3 bandits away. The beautiful young girl shed tears of gratitude towards the scholar. After introducing themselves, they found out that she was the daughter of the prefectural magistrate. She was from a prestigious and wealthy family. This young girl was robbed by bandits when she came out to play. If not for the scholar's bravery, the consequences would be unimaginable. Afterwards, the young girl begged the scholar to send her home. The scholar was a good person and sent the young girl home. When the prefectural magistrate found out about this, he warmly welcomed the scholar, gave him money, and promised him a bright future. But this wasn't all. He proposed marriage. It turned out that after the scholar saved the young girl, she secretly fell in love with him and asked her father to matchmake them. The scholar was terrified, but he had a virtuous wife and they were inseparable. He once swore to his wife that he would only love her and marry her. He politely declined the prefectural magistrate's good intentions. When the prefectural magistrate heard that the scholar's family was poor, he purposely let the scholar stay overnight in his residence. He took him to travel around and made friends with high officials, noble people, and elegant scholars. They lived a dreamy life of luxury. The scholar gradually lost himself in the influence of all kinds of luxuries. Fox Demon found that the scholar often didn't return home at night. When he came back, he was drunk. He faintly felt that something was wrong, so he persuaded the scholar to leave as soon as possible and go home. Although the scholar was very reluctant, he knew that the prefectural magistrate wasn't related to him. He clenched his teeth and left. Back to his hometown, back home. The scholar looked around and saw that his hometown had withered and his family was poor. It wasn't as prosperous as the prefectural magistrate's residence. Every day, he ate simple tea and read books. It wasn't as comfortable as the prefectural magistrate's residence. The scholar missed that dreamy life very much. After suffering for several months, the scholar participated in the provincial examination and failed again. But this time, after the prefectural magistrate heard the news, he casually said that the scholar was on the list and became a scholar. This matter greatly affected the scholar. He studied hard, but he couldn't change his fate. It was better to have a little nepotism. So the scholar threw away his books and took out the little money he had at home. He bought gorgeous clothes and tried his best to squeeze into the upper class. As one could imagine, it was very expensive to cultivate connections. The scholar's expenses were increasing day by day, and he couldn't make ends meet. He constantly borrowed money from his relatives and friends. When he couldn't borrow money, he turned to loan sharks. Soon, his family's wealth was ruined and his debts were high. Fox Demon saw the scholar degenerate day by day. It tried to persuade him, but to no avail. Instead, he became more and more distant. At this time, there was a sudden famine. This disaster was the last straw that broke the scholar's back. His poor life and debt caused him to lose all standing and reputation. He was beaten up by people who chased him for his debts. His friends in the upper class abandoned him after hearing the news. The prefectural magistrate also broke off relations with him, and the promise he had made was now in vain. The scholar was desperate and decided to escape. He had a wife and elderly parents at home, so he could only take his wife with him. Fox Demon asked him, "You have countless debts. If you run away, what will happen to your parents? Will the debt collectors let them go?" The scholar was like a madman. He didn't want to care about anything. He said cruelly, "It doesn't matter. I can't even protect myself. I can't take care of them." Fox Demon said with tears in his eyes, "Are you still human when you run away like this? I won't go with you." The scholar left without looking back. Fox Demon fell to the ground. Its mana dissipated with the wind. It could barely maintain its human form. It lost the bet. The laughing monk suddenly appeared and told Fox Demon that he was the one who arranged for the mishap of the rich young lady. He was also the one who enlightened the prefectural magistrate. Under his careful planning, the scholar's kindness and beauty were slowly eroded and destroyed. All that was left was hysterical desire and insatiable selfishness. Such a scholar wouldn't love anyone, including Fox Demon. Fox Demon roared in despair, "You're not a monk. You're a demon." The laughing monk laughed and left. Even so, Fox Demon didn't give up. She wanted to use her last love to save the scholar. She, who had no mana, began to rely on the door to repay her debts and take care of her parents. After 3 years, the scholar returned to his hometown. Chapter 306. The scholar was back. Then, he was struck by a bolt from the blue. When he heard that his wife had sold herself and allowed others to toy with her, he was furious and wanted to kill that be *tch. The scholar rushed home angrily, only to find that his parents were still alive. There was also a beautiful woman waiting for him to marry her. Only his wife was nowhere to be seen. His parents told the scholar that his wife had sold herself to earn money to support them. She had paid off his debt and even bought him a beautiful woman to be his wife. The scholar sneered in anger. Did that be *tch think that I would forgive her just like that? His parents wept and said, "She killed herself when she knew that you were coming back." The Fox Demon was dead. The scholar broke down and went crazy. The Fox Demon was dead, but she had recorded his life and used his blood to teach the Fox Demon of the Green Hill Sacred Ground to see the true colors of Buddhism. Ingji stared coldly at the laughing monk. The story flashed through her mind, and she couldn't help but gasp in shock. Immediately, fluorescent paper released her divine sense. As expected, she found that there were many experts surrounding her, forming a circle around her. "Let's go." Ingji didn't hesitate and pulled Xiejun into the Wushang Inn. However, she tried again and again to activate the human-shaped amulet, but to no avail. "Give up. This place has been sealed. We can't teleport," the laughing monk said loudly. Ingji's face turned pale. She turned to look at Xiejun with despair in her eyes. Xiejun looked at Ingji and then at the monk. Suddenly, he understood everything. The laughing monk took a step forward and appeared in front of Xiejun. He chuckled and said, "Benefactor Xie, I've finally found you." Xiejun clenched and unclenched his fists. At this moment, he asked himself a question. What would I do if I were Brother Shin? Suddenly, Xiejun's mind raced. Suddenly, he saw the light. He shielded Ingji behind him and said, "I'm tired of hiding. If there's anything, just come at me." The laughing monk was slightly taken aback. Xiejun's resolute and courageous gaze made him squint and say, "Benefactor Xie, you have stolen the Buddha heart gu. Please follow me to the Fayuan temple to settle this matter." Xiejun puffed out his chest and said seriously, "I didn't know what was going on in the past, but I figured it out later. I didn't steal anything. When I stayed at Kushan Temple, the Buddha heart gu chose me and entered my body. Kushan Temple's Kongming master did not distinguish between right and wrong. Without confirming whether the Buddha heart gu was with me, he imprisoned me, abused me, and tortured me. He was extremely cruel and merciless. He did not have the compassion of a monk at all. Brother Shun told me that gu is the essence of heaven and earth. It is ownerless and does not belong to anyone. Only those who are fated can obtain it. Since the Buddha heart gu chose me, it is mine. I don't know Fayuan Temple anything. I hope Fayuan Temple will know when to stop and not continue to pester and make things difficult for us." The laughing monk heard this and laughed loudly. His voice was like thunder as he said, "Nonsense, a bunch of nonsense. The Buddha heart goo is the holy goo of Buddhism. How can it be ownerless? You stole it first and conspired with Shun Lian to kill Master Kongming Master. You have committed a heinous crime." "I didn't." Xiezhen was slightly angry. His gaze flickered and he said, "Master is certain that I stole it. May I ask, what evidence do you have?" The laughing monk said, "The Buddha heart goo is in your body. That is the ironclad evidence." Xiezhen laughed and said loudly, "That's strange. From what I know, goo are extremely difficult to refine. They are very picky and will only accept the most suitable goo master. I am just an insignificant person who doesn't understand Buddhism. Why would the holy goo of Buddhism take a fancy to me?" The laughing monk's smile froze for a moment before he said, "The Gu Dao is extremely profound and cannot be concluded with a single sentence. But everyone knows that the unorthodox path has many ways to refine Gu. The Buddha heart Gu is also a Gu and can be corrupted. Who knows what kind of unorthodox method you use to refine it successfully? Speaking of this, Benefactor Xie has another crime. That is, you have corrupted the holy Gu of Buddhism." Xiezhen said firmly, "I am just an ordinary person with no strength to truss a chicken. I don't know how to refine Gu, much less the unorthodox methods. The ironclad evidence is that I only have the Buddha heart Gu in my body and no other Gu. If I use the unorthodox methods, then I must be an expert in the Gu Dao. Then why don't I have other Gu in my body?" The laughing monk said indifferently, "This monk said earlier that the unorthodox methods are strange and unpredictable. Who knows how you did it? But it doesn't matter. Once we reach the Fuyuan temple, the truth will be revealed." Xiezhen shook his head speechlessly and said with a disappointed expression, "I have always admired Buddhism and was sincere in doing good. But I never thought that Buddhism would sow discord, be cunning and insidious, unable to distinguish right from wrong and evil. Reverend Kongming was like that, and so are you." The laughing monk laughed. "The innocent knows that they are innocent, and the muddy knows that they are muddy. Benefactor Xie, please go to the Fuyuan temple and prove your innocence. If you are really innocent, the Fuyuan temple will definitely not make things difficult for you." Xiezhen shook his head. "You can see the whole leopard from a single spot. The Fuyuan temple and Kushan temple are jackals of the same tribe. Buddhism is fabricated and its teachings are empty. Buddhism is not worthy of the word holy." The laughing monk sneered. "What is fabricated? What is empty? You're not a Buddha, so how do you know whether Buddhism is holy or not? Benefactor Xie, you have made a huge mistake and do not want to admit it. This monk can understand. But you are so flustered and exasperated, slandering the Buddhist holy court. This is a great disrespect." Xiezhen sighed. "Reverend was the one who slandered us first. He was the one who was unreasonable. He looked around. You even sent so many people to surround us. From the start, you did not intend to let us go. Such hypocritical behavior, and you actually call yourself the Buddhist holy court. This is the biggest joke in the world." The laughing monk's smile did not fade. "Benefactor Xie keeps on evading the responsibility. You are clearly guilty and trying to avoid responsibility. It seems this monk has no choice but to use force and invite you to the Fuyuan temple as a guest." The laughing monk was speaking with assurance when suddenly Ingji rushed out and pressed his palm on his stomach. 1, 2, 3 Woodman. Ingji had been looking for an opportunity to escape. It was extremely difficult to break out of the encirclement, so he might as well capture the leader first. He immediately used the Woodman Gu. This Gu was extremely mystical. As long as he lightly tapped the enemy would become motionless. After one tap, Ingji immediately went behind the laughing monk, his 5 fingers turning into sharp claws and grabbing onto the laughing monk's neck. But the laughing monk's arms shook and a fierce aura burst out from his body as he punched Ingji's stomach. Ingji immediately bent down like a shrimp. His body flew out, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. "Jia!" Xiezhen shouted. Ingji landed 100 feet away and coughed out another mouthful of blood. his face as pale as paper. Chapter 307. Ingji's delicate body trembled as she stood up. Her lower abdomen was dripping with blood, dyeing her clothes red. The laughing monk's heavy punch was exceptionally fierce and should have been waiting for this moment. Thinking about it, if he had predicted that Ingji would use the wooden man goo and found a way to counter it, he would have launched a sneak attack when Ingji was unprepared. Ingji would not have been able to dodge it. The laughing monk's attack was a critical hit and severely injured Ingji. After the laughing monk succeeded, he smiled with a mocking expression and said, "Are you wondering why your wooden man goo is ineffective against me?" Ingji wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and endured the immense pain, coldly saying, "Stinky, bald donkey, you seem to want to show off. I'm all ears." The laughing monk smiled. "Your wooden man goo is very mystical. The person you hit will immediately enter a state of stillness and won't be able to move. The important thing is that you have to hit your target to complete the attack. This is the weakness of the wooden man goo and the way to counter it." Ingji's eyes flashed, and she said in surprise, "I naturally know about this weakness. That's why I train myself to be extremely fast, aiming to hit my target with one hit. I did it you just now." The laughing monk laughed loudly and said proudly, "You did hit me. Unfortunately, you don't know that I have cultivated a smile-type goo. As the saying goes, don't hit a smiling person. Your attack on me was neutralized, so the wooden man goo's attack was naturally ineffective. The more famous smile-type goo is the smiling face goo. It should be related to Buddhism." Ingji pursed her lips, and a deep cold light flashed in her eyes. She said in a low voice, "No wonder you are called the laughing monk. So your smile is so terrifying." The laughing monk's mouth twitched and said, "On account of Qing Chiu Holy Land, I will let you go. Go." Ingji snorted coldly. "Ji, are you all right?" At this time, Xiejun ran to Ingji's side and held her arm, her face full of worry and anxiety. Ingji held Xiejun's hand and said, "Darling Xie, we will never be separated." Xiejun nodded. "Never be separated." The laughing monk laughed in disdain. "If it wasn't for the Buddha heart goo, I would have made a bet with you. Forget it. Take action. Capture them." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 36 monks suddenly appeared. Each and every one of them had bronze skin. They spread out in all directions, forming a strange formation that didn't have any blind spots. "Who are you?" "Who are you?" "Ji." Ingji snorted and said, "How did you find us?" Bailey Xingshu pursed his lips and looked at the sky with his hands behind his back. "What's so difficult about that?" "At first, I was puzzled about one thing. Xiejun had been imprisoned in the Kushan temple for a year, but Shun Lian hadn't gone to rescue him. Later, he suddenly went to the Kushan temple and rescued Xiejun. Why did someone suddenly inform him? Starting from this point, I found that during the year when Xiejun was imprisoned in the Dry Mountain Temple, the Fox clan was very active in the Dry Mountain Temple. In addition, we heard from Xiejun's hometown that Xiejun had once adopted a fox. All the clues pointed to the Fox clan, so the next thing was much simpler. I contacted my friends in the Green Hill Holy Land, and after some investigation, I found that you were the only one who had been to Xiejun's hometown. Finally, with you as the target, I followed the clues and found Xiejun." Ingji could not help but laugh bitterly and said coldly, "You actually have friends in the Holy Land of Green Hill. Haha, it turns out that I was betrayed by my own people." Bailey Xingshu sighed and said, "It's over. You better leave on your own. Otherwise, you will leave in a very miserable way." Ingji raised his chin and said proudly, "You came prepared and made targeted arrangements. However, even a wise man can make mistakes. You neglected one thing." "Oh," Bailey Xingshu narrowed his eyes. Ingji said loudly, "This mountain is the motionless mountain. I chose to live in seclusion here not only because it is far away from the world, but also because there is an important reason. That is," Ingji suddenly punched the ground. There was a loud bang. The earth trembled slightly. Bailey Xingshu thought of something and his expression suddenly changed. He subconsciously turned his head to look at the top of the mountain. The laughing monk also looked up with a stiff smile. The motionless mountain was covered in white snow. The slight tremor spread out like ripples. The white snow on the top of the mountain slowly rolled down. It rolled more and more fiercely like a tide, rumbling like thunder, and finally formed a huge avalanche. It arrived in the blink of an eye. "Let's go." Ingji pulled Xiejun and ran towards a towering ancient tree beside the thatched cottage. Bailey Xingshu, the laughing monk, and the 36 bronze men were all shocked and ran away frantically. The avalanche swept past, drowning everything. After the avalanche swept past, the sky and earth turned white. The collapsed thatched cottage was completely gone, and the sweet footprints left behind in the snow were also gone. Bang! Beside the slanted tree, a snow-white arm broke through the snow. Then a person climbed out. Who else could it be but Ingji? Ingji raised his head, and Xiejun also came out. "Ji, or this?" Xiejun looked around. It was a vast expanse of whiteness. This was clearly the place where he lived, but he felt unfamiliar. The avalanche can't do anything to them. "Let's go quickly." Ingji pulled Xiejun and ran quickly. After taking 2 steps, she spat out a mouthful of blood. She was more severely injured by the laughing monk than she had imagined. Let's find a place to hide first." "You need to treat your injuries," Xiejun said anxiously. Ingji shook his head and squeezed out a faint smile, indicating that he was fine. He only pulled Xiejun and took a deep breath. Then, he turned into a gust of cold wind and flew up. A strong ray of light suddenly shot towards them. In midair, Ingji screamed and fell rapidly. When he was close to the ground, he suddenly steadied himself and landed on the ice lake at the foot of the mountain. Ingji's shoulder was pierced by an arrow, and he kept spitting out blood. "Darling Xie, let's go quickly." Ingji gritted his teeth and pulled the arrow out of his shoulder. Then, he pulled Xiejun into the ice lake and stepped on the thick layer of ice. "As long as we pass through the ice lake, we should be able to leave Kaifeng Forbidden Region and teleport to Wushang Inn." Xiejun's heart ached as tears welled up in his eyes. He forcefully suppressed his endless grief and anger as he supported Ingji and ran to the other side of the lake. Suddenly, a figure rushed over from the side. It was the laughing monk, and he punched Ingji in the chest. Ingji groaned as he flew back and rolled on the ice until he reached the other side of the lake. The laughing monk grabbed Xiejun's shoulder and threw him forward. Immediately, a bronze monk tied him up with iron chains. Ingji fell on the shore, his clothes drenched in blood. She turned to look at Xiejun and saw that he was tied up by iron chains. When she heard Xiejun shouting her name, she couldn't help but burst into tears. "Darling Xie." She stretched out her hand. "Ji-er." Xiejun also stretched out his hand. They were separated by 100 meters on the ice lake. They only wanted to hold each other's hands. The bronze monk was shocked. He held on tightly to the iron chains, but Xiejun pulled him forward. Immediately, another bronze monk rushed over and pulled on the iron chains as well. However, they were still pulled by Xiejun and couldn't stop. One bronze monk after another rushed over. In the end, all 36 bronze men were there, pulling on the iron chains like a tug-of-war. "Paper!" Xiejun extended his hand forward. His body burst forth with a strong halo of light. In his eyes, there was only the fluorescent paper. He was completely unaware that he had single-handedly dragged the 36 bronze statues of the Faiyun Temple along the ground. Seeing this, the laughing monk put his palms together. "Amitba." He walked forward and struck the back of Xiejun's head with his palm. Xiejun fainted on the ground. The last thing he saw was blood spreading out under Ingji's body. It was like a beautiful flower blooming on the other side of the lake. Chapter 308. This was a win-win situation. The Faiyun Temple would capture Xiejun as they wished, and Family Huang would obtain an incomparably terrifying fighting force, the Angry Monk. Furthermore, according to their agreement, the Angry Monk would first engage in a fierce battle with the Shunlian, while Family Huang would reap the benefits. With the Angry Monk and the Blood Sea and Corpse Mountain formation, the Shunlian will have a slim chance of survival. Family Huang will definitely win. Bailey Xingshu heaved a sigh of relief as he welcomed the cold wind blowing from the peak of Mount Immovable. Even though the air was thin and cold, it made him feel exceptionally comfortable. Thump, thump, thump. At this moment, a streak of light sped over from afar. It came to a sudden stop and transformed into a beautiful kite, flapping its wings rapidly like a hummingbird. Bailey Xingshu's eyes flashed as he hurriedly raised his hand. The kite drew an arc in the air and floated down onto his arm, unfolding naturally and transforming into a blank piece of paper. Bailey Xingshu immediately took out a silver needle and pricked his fingertip, dripping blood onto the paper. The blood seeped into the paper and melted. Lines of blood red words appeared on the paper. Bailey Xingshu stared at it, and his brows instantly furrowed into a knot. His complexion was as cold as frost, and gradually the blood drained from his face. The contents of the letter were as follows. Shun Lian arrived at Lonely Mountain and solved a heaven-level puzzle. The gate of Lonely Mountain blushed and was bestowed with an unknown primordial treasure. The ambush on the Shun Lian in the Valley of Ruins failed. Shun Lian forced one of the 10 elders, Zhang Yuan Shi, to hand over the primordial treasure, the Heaven Inscription Seal. Suelin of Goguryeo actively participated in the battle and did not hesitate to use Qiani holy water to help Shun Lian repel the enemy. Bailey Xingshu read the letter 3 times in a row, then slowly rolled it into a ball and threw it into the distance. With a whoosh, the ball of paper suddenly burst into flames in the air, burning into ashes and dissipating into the air. Heaven-level puzzles, unknown innate cardinal treasure, Heaven Expansion Seal. Bailey Xingshu's eyes flickered, and his face gradually darkened like a ghost. He looked ferocious and tyrannical, and was particularly frightening. Why is this happening? Bailey Xingshu clutched his aching chest and gasped. He mumbled to himself, I've racked my brains, and even committed a great sin and committed karma, but I still can't gain the upper hand. The sun shone on his head, and his hair withered at a speed visible to the naked eye. His sideburns glowed with a faint white light. Puff! All of a sudden, Bailey Xingshu's face turned red, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood, staining the snow red. Bailey Xingshu's vision went black, and his body swayed a few times before stabilizing. He had no choice but to retreat to a nearby tree. He leaned against it and took a few deep breaths. Only then did his complexion slightly improve. At this time, the laughing monk walked over. Bailey Xingshu quickly straightened his body and wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth. He moved his feet and kicked up some snow to cover the blood on the ground. Then he clasped his hands behind his back, looking as calm as ever, as if he was strategizing. The laughing monk walked closer, and his gaze focused on Bailey Xingshu. He couldn't help but feel slightly surprised. For some reason, the laughing monk felt that Bailey Xingshu had suddenly aged by 10 years. Deep exhaustion and unresolvable worry could be seen on his face. He was in charge of raising laughter-type goo, so he could naturally tell if a person was smiling or not. But Bailey Xingshu's smile couldn't be any more fake. The laughing monk was deep in thought, but his expression didn't change as he smiled. As expected of Mr. Bai Li, your wisdom is peerless. This time, we were able to successfully find the Buddha heart goo because of Mr. Bai Li's contribution. Fuyuan Temple is extremely grateful. Bai Li smiled faintly. Everyone takes what they need. It's mutually beneficial. Speaking of which, I only contributed a little. The Fuyuan Temple is the one who has to contribute a lot. The laughing monk laughed loudly. Senior brother is already on the way and will arrive soon. I wish family Huang to defeat Shun Lian and become the champion of the Northern Lands. Bailey Xingshu cupped his fists and smiled. With the angry monk's help, Shun Lian is bound to lose. The laughing monk put his palms together. The green mountains never change, and the green rivers flow forever. We will meet again if fate allows it. After saying this, the laughing monk left with the 36 bronze men and the unconscious Xiezhen. Bailey Xingshu watched him leave. After a long time, he blew a whistle, and a golden-winged condor flew over and landed beside him. "It's time to go." Bailey Xingshu sighed and jumped onto the giant condor's back. The golden-winged condor immediately spread its wings and soared into the sky. Bailey Xingshu raised his head and suddenly felt that the sunlight was extremely dazzling, so he subconsciously lowered his head. Then, he saw the ice lake. There was a beautiful red flower blooming on the shore. In this world of ice and snow, it was like a burning flame. It was very beautiful. Shun Lian's group left Lone Mountain and walked for about 100 li. Shun Lian suddenly waved his hand. "Stop!" Suilin of Goguryeo turned his head and looked at him, asking curiously, "Why are we stopping?" "Ahead of us is King Dog Mountain. After King Dog Mountain, there's a flat road that leads to 9 Ingu Stronghold." Fong Ruashi interrupted. "King Dog Mountain is the territory of the demon dogs. The demon dogs raised by the 10 elders of Valley of Ruins all come from King Dog Mountain." Shun Lian looked back and said, "Someone is following us." Suilin of Goguryeo's expression changed. After a moment of silence, he said in a deep voice, "It might be someone from Valley of Ruins. After all, you took their heaven-rubbishing seal." Shun Lian pondered for a moment. His eyes flashed, and he took out the heaven-rubbishing seal. Of course, this was not the real thing. It was a perfect copy projected from the Emperor's treasure house. Shun Lian smiled and said, "Suilin of Goguryeo, do you want to know the use of the heaven-rubbishing seal?" Suilin of Goguryeo certainly wanted to know. His heart was itching with curiosity. He said, "Innate treasures are very powerful and mysterious. This heaven-rubbishing seal has a mysterious origin. I have never heard of it. Of course, I want to broaden my horizons." Shun Lian's expression turned serious, and he said seriously, "Then stand firm." "Why am I standing still?" Water Chilin King frowned and said. Suddenly, Shun Lian picked up the heavenly inscription seal and closed it on him. With sharp eyes and agile hands, he pressed on his chest. "How dare you?" At this moment, Suilin of Goguryeo was horrified to the extreme. His hair stood on end, and he retreated rapidly. In a flash, he was 10 zhang away. Then he said with a gloomy face, "What did you do to me?" The heaven-rubbishing seal in Shun Lian's hand turned into sand and disappeared into thin air. Hearing this, he did not answer. He only stared at Suilin of Goguryeo with interest. He seemed to be waiting for something. Suilin of Goguryeo felt his hair stand on end. Suilin of Goguryeo quickly looked at his chest. The heaven-rubbishing seal had left a mark on his body. It was a picture of a quiet and secluded bamboo house in a richly colored landscape. It was unique and elegant. After a while, Suilin of Goguryeo felt a mysterious heat flow in his body. It flowed uncontrollably. After a breath, the seal on his chest suddenly shone brightly. The lines in the seal came to life and turned into small snakes. They climbed, spread, and expanded on his clothes and skin. A magical scene appeared.